Argoz had always been drawn to the light. In the dark crevices of the goblin warrens where she was born, her earliest memories were of crawling towards glints of treasure, the flash of metal, the glimmer of a stolen gem, even the way a smooth stone caught the firelight. She was unlike the others, the goblins who scoffed at anything that didn't serve an immediate purpose. They didn't understand the beauty of a polished coin, the thrill of a jeweled dagger. For Argoz, each piece held a story, each trinket was a prize. She started small, filching bits of treasure from careless merchants, growing bolder with each success. Her obsession with shiny things became a hunger, a need that pulsed beneath her skin. She wasn't after riches for power or respect, she craved them for their beauty and their shimmer. Over the years, her skills in theft and escape became refined, polished through countless encounters and narrow escapes. She was swift, quiet, and relentless. Now, Argoz had a reputation not just as a thief but as a force to be reckoned with. Mirkdusk was her playground, a sprawling, rugged landscape where the shadows fell early and danger lurked in every corner. The terrain was harsh, jagged cliffs and deep forests, towns built on precipices, and abandoned mines filled with treasures left by miners too afraid to return. From the mountain peaks of Shadowspire to the low-lying swamps of Feymarsh, Mirkdusk was a place where the strong survived and the clever thrived. It was a land of rival factions and dangerous alliances. The most powerful of them was Lord Draven, a ruthless noble who hoarded artifacts and had amassed enough wealth to decorate his entire fortress in rare jewels and gold. Draven was more than a lord. He was a tyrant who brokered in secrets and traded in lives. His subjects hated him, but he was powerful enough to crush any rebellion. For Argoz, Draven's fortress was more than a challenge, it was an invitation. His treasures were whispered about in every corner of Mirkdusk, and she had been listening. She knew of the celestial gem, the prized jewel of his collection, which was said to glow with the light of the stars. Rumour had it that Draven's fortress was protected by more than just walls and guards. It was said he had bound dark magic to the land itself, and only the bravest or most foolish would attempt a theft. Argoz, of course, fit both descriptions. Argoz was more than just a thief. She was a collector, an artist of sorts, though she wouldn't have used that word. Her hideout, a secret lair in the cliffs near Tanglewood Hollow, was decorated with her pretties, as she called them. The walls were lined with chains of pearls, discarded rings, polished stones, and pieces of mirror. She had a way of categorizing them, sometimes by colour, sometimes by size, but always by the strange sense of wonder each item brought her. Whenever she acquired a new piece, she would spend hours examining it, running her fingers along its surface, admiring the way the light bounced off it. She had her favourites, of course, a ruby bracelet stolen from a noble's wife, a silver coin etched with a forgotten language, a delicate gold chain that glimmered even in the dark. But it was her lucky coin that she valued most. It was a simple copper piece, unremarkable to anyone else, but to Argoz, it was the first piece she'd ever stolen. The first time she had felt the thrill of the chase, the rush of success. She kept it close, rubbing it between her fingers whenever she needed to think or plan her next heist. Argoz wasn't one for friends, but she did have acquaintances, people who shared her appreciation for treasure, albeit in their own twisted ways. One of these was Ezran the Trickster, a half-elf with a quick smile and a talent for illusions. They had met in the town of Fogroot after a botched heist, where they both found themselves on the wrong side of a tavern brawl. Argoz, always quick with her wits and quicker with her blade, had fought her way out, and Ezran, amused and impressed, had followed. Ezran was as greedy as she was, though his love for treasure was more strategic. To him, riches meant power. To her, they meant beauty and thrill. Their differences made them complementary, if not exactly trustworthy allies. Ezran knew of the celestial gem and had warned her against it, but Argoz was undeterred. To her, the gem represented everything she loved in one exquisite glittering package. It was her destiny to steal it. With Ezran's reluctant assistance, Argoz began crafting her plan. Draven's fortress was a nightmare for most thieves. Guards patrolled every hour, magical wards protected the walls, and even the windows were fitted with cursed glass that could cut through flesh as easily as silk. Argoz loved it. Every obstacle was a test of her skills, a puzzle waiting to be solved. She pored over maps of the fortress, memorizing every entrance and every guard rotation, until she knew the place better than Draven's own men. Ezran's illusions would cover her escape, but the entry would be all her own. She would scale the western wall, slip through the guard tower, and disable the wards on the eastern courtyard. From there, it was a short dash to the treasure chamber, where the celestial gem waited. But Argoz knew better than to think everything would go according to plan. She was a realist, after all. The thrill was in the unpredictability, the unexpected twist, the near miss, the split-second decisions that separated the truly great thieves from the amateurs. And Argoz was no amateur. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting Mirkdusk into shadow as Argoz prepared herself. Tonight was the night. The crisp air sharpened her senses as she adjusted the straps of her leather armor, hidden beneath a loose, dark cloak. She reached into her pouch and drew out her lucky coin, rubbing it between her fingers as she studied the looming silhouette of Duskfall Fortress in the distance. Duskfall wasn't just any fortress, it was a monument to wealth and arrogance, a dark stone behemoth that seemed to claw at the sky. Fires glowed in its towers, casting an eerie orange light against the fortress walls. She could see the flickering forms of guards patrolling the battlements, their shadows long and foreboding. Ezran had warned her not to underestimate Lord Draven, but Argoz's heart beat with a familiar excitement. This was why she lived. To face the impossible, to outwit the powerful, and to claim the beauty they tried so hard to keep from her. Her plan was simple in theory, but devilishly complex in practice. She would scale the outer wall, avoid the guards, and enter through a narrow window near the armory. Once inside, she would make her way to the vault where the celestial gem awaited, glowing with the light of 1,000 stars. Or so the stories said. As she moved through the shadows, Argoz felt alive. Her senses were heightened, her mind sharp. Every sound, every flicker of movement was registered, catalogued, and assessed. Her small stature allowed her to slip through spaces where others would struggle. Every step was calculated, every move purposeful. She was a predator in the night, and Duskfall was her hunting ground. Scaling the fortress wall was easy for someone like her. She'd grown up clambering over rocky cliffs and squeezing into tight spaces in the goblin warrens. Her fingers found purchase in the stone, and she pulled herself up with the agility of a spider. Halfway up, she paused, pressing herself flat against the cold stone as a guard passed above her, his torch casting a glow that barely missed her. When the guard moved on, she continued her ascent, slipping through the narrow window and landing silently inside the armory. Rows of weapons gleamed in the dim light, swords, spears, and shields adorned with precious metals. For a moment, Argoz's fingers itched with the urge to touch, to feel the cold steel and the gleam of polished silver. But tonight, there was only one prize that mattered. The fortress was eerily silent, the only sounds the distant crackling of torches and the occasional murmuring of guards as they passed on their patrols. Argoz moved swiftly, sticking to the shadows and listening for any sign of trouble. The halls were filled with tapestries and statues, tributes to Lord Draven's conquests and victories. Every corner was designed to intimidate, to remind visitors of his power. As she approached the main hall, she felt the subtle tingle of magic, a protective ward. Ezran had warned her about these. The wards weren't visible to the eye, but to someone with Argoz's sensitivity, they felt like a gentle pressure against her skin. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a small vial of ground nightshade, sprinkling it across the floor. The dust revealed a faint, shimmering barrier across the hallway. "Nice try, Draven," she whispered, with a smirk. With careful movements, Argoz slipped through the gaps in the ward, her breath steady as she focused. One wrong move, and the entire fortress would be alerted. But she was no ordinary thief. She was an artist, and this was her masterpiece. At last, she reached the door to the vault. The lock was intricate, a work of art in itself, with interlocking gears and hidden mechanisms designed to keep out even the most determined thief. But to Argos, it was a challenge she relished. She pulled out her lockpicks, fingers deftly working through the mechanisms, her ears attuned to every click and shift within the lock. Minutes passed, each one filled with a tension that she savoured. Finally, there was a soft, satisfying click, and the door creaked open. Inside, the vault was dark, save for a single pedestal at its centre, illuminated by a faint, ethereal glow. There it was, the celestial gem. It was even more beautiful than she had imagined, a perfect sphere that glowed with a soft, silvery light. As she approached, the gem seemed to pulse in response, as if sensing her presence. She reached out, her fingers trembling with anticipation, and lifted it from its stand. In that moment, she felt a surge of joy so intense it was almost painful. She had done it. The celestial gem was hers, but her triumph was short-lived. As soon as the gem left the pedestal, a deep, resonant sound echoed through the vault, a low hum that grew louder with each passing second. The air grew thick with the sensation of magic, dark and oppressive. Argos's heart raced as she looked around, realizing that the vault was sealing itself shut. "Clever," she muttered under her breath, admiring Draven's precautions even as she cursed them. She turned and sprinted for the door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it, locking her inside. The walls began to pulse with a dark energy, and she felt the familiar tingle of a powerful enchantment. Trapped, with no way out. But Argoz wasn't one to give up easily. She was resourceful after all. She pulled out a small vial from her pouch, an explosive concoction she'd purchased from an alchemist in Shadowspire. Normally she used it as a last resort, but desperate times called for desperate measures. She placed the vial against the door and struck it with the hilt of her dagger. The resulting explosion was muffled but effective, blowing the door off its hinges and sending a cloud of smoke billowing into the corridor. Without a moment's hesitation, she dashed through the haze, clutching the celestial gem tightly as she made her escape. Alarms began to blare, and the fortress was thrown into chaos. Guards shouted, their footsteps echoing down the halls as they searched for the intruder. Argos's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was what she lived for, the thrill of the chase, the rush of escape. She dodged and weaved through the fortress, evading guards and slipping through hidden passages. She could see the exit ahead, the night air beckoning her to freedom. But just as she reached the outer courtyard, a towering figure stepped into her path. Lord Draven was even more imposing than she had imagined. Clad in dark armour that glimmered faintly in the moonlight, he looked like a figure from a nightmare. A tall, muscular man with cold, calculating eyes and a face hardened by years of battle. He regarded her with a look of disdain, as if she were nothing more than an insect to be crushed. In his hand, he held a long, wickedly sharp sword, the blade etched with runes that pulsed with a dark energy. "You must be the little thief causing all this trouble," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Did you really think you could steal from me and walk away?" Argos smirked, hiding the fear that gnawed at her. "What can I say? I have a weakness for pretty things." Draven's eyes narrowed, and he took a step forward, his sword raised. You should have stayed in the shadows, goblin. Now, you'll pay the price. The two stood in tense silence, facing each other in the moonlit courtyard. Argoz tightened her grip on the celestial gem, feeling its warmth seep into her skin. She knew she was outmatched, but she had one thing Draven didn't: a fierce, unrelenting spirit and a willingness to take risks that others would balk at. With a final smirk, she dashed to the side, narrowly avoiding his first strike as she made a desperate bid for freedom. The moon cast a cold light over the courtyard, illuminating the tense standoff between Argoz and Lord Draven. The fortress alarm blared, echoing against the stone walls, but both Argoz and Draven were focused solely on each other. Argoz's heart pounded as she calculated her options, clutching the celestial gem tightly against her chest. Draven moved with the confidence of a seasoned warrior, his heavy steps unhurried as he advanced. His sword gleamed, catching the moonlight and casting a faint glow that made the runes shimmer ominously. Argoz knew she couldn't match him in brute strength, but she had something he didn't: speed, agility, and the willingness to take risks. With a grin, she darted forward, feinting to the left, before sliding past him on the right, her dagger flashing out in a quick, precise slash. She felt her blade connect, slicing through the edge of his cloak, but Draven didn't even flinch. Instead, he swung his sword in a wide arc, forcing her to leap back, narrowly avoiding the deadly blade. "Is that all you've got, thief?" he taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. "I expected more from the infamous goblin of Mirkdusk." Argoz laughed, keeping her stance low and ready. "You don't know me, Draven. I'm just getting started." They clashed in a blur of motion, Draven's heavy strikes crashing down like thunder, while Argoz danced around him, quick and elusive as a shadow. Each swing of his sword sent sparks flying as it struck the stone or scraped against her dagger. Argoz could feel the weight of his power, each strike a reminder that one misstep would mean her end. She moved with precision, every dodge and counterattack executed with the skill of someone who had spent a lifetime surviving on the edge. But Draven was relentless, his strikes unyielding. She couldn't hold him off forever. Then she spotted her opening, a narrow alley to the left, leading out of the courtyard and into the maze of the fortress's inner gardens. Without hesitation, she threw a handful of flash powder at Draven's feet. The powder exploded in a burst of blinding light, forcing him to shield his eyes. Using the distraction, Argoz turned and sprinted into the alley, her heart pounding with the thrill of escape. She could hear Draven's enraged roar behind her as he shook off the effects of the flash and gave chase. Argoz raced through the twisting paths of the fortress gardens, her footsteps light and quick. The gardens were a maze of high hedges and stone statues, an ornate labyrinth meant to intimidate visitors. But to Argoz, it was an opportunity, a place to hide, to confuse, and to outwit. She darted around corners, vaulting over hedges and slipping through narrow gaps in the foliage. Behind her, Draven's heavy footsteps thundered, his anger palpable in the night air. She could hear the clink of his armor, the growl of his frustration. Every turn she took, he seemed just a step behind, relentless in his pursuit. Argoz skidded to a stop as she reached a dead end, a high wall of stone blocking her path. She cursed under her breath, turning to face the way she had come. There was no time to climb the wall, not with Draven so close. As his figure appeared at the end of the path silhouetted by moonlight, she took a deep breath, clutching the celestial gem and readying herself for one last gamble. Draven advanced, a smug smile spreading across his face as he saw her trapped. "Nowhere left to run, little goblin. Surrender the gem, and I might spare your life." Argoz's eyes sparkled with defiance. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing. You should know better than to corner a goblin." With that, she threw the celestial gem into the air, sending it arcing over his head. Draven's gaze followed the gem, his instincts taking over as he reached out to grab it. In that split second, Argoz lunged forward, sweeping her leg low and knocking him off balance. As he stumbled, she leaped onto his back, using his own weight against him to throw him forward. He crashed into the wall, momentarily dazed, as the gem fell back into her waiting hand. She whispered in his ear, "You're not the only one who can play dirty." Before he could recover, Argoz sprinted past him, back down the path, her grin wide and heart pounding with adrenaline. She could hear more guards converging on her position, their shouts echoing through the night. Argoz didn't slow, her feet flying over the stone paths as she made her way toward the outer walls. She knew she couldn't outrun Draven and his men forever, not in his own fortress. But she had one last trick up her sleeve. Reaching a secluded corner near the western wall, she pulled a small grappling hook from her belt and swung it over the battlements. The hook caught, and she began climbing, her fingers digging into the rough stone as she scaled the wall. Just as she reached the top, she felt a surge of dread. Draven had caught up. He stood below, his face twisted in fury, his sword drawn as he glared up at her. "Run all you want, Argoz," he shouted. "I'll hunt you to the ends of the realms." Argoz looked down, a defiant smirk on her face as she balanced on the wall's edge. "Good luck catching me." With a final wink, she leapt from the wall, disappearing into the shadows below, the celestial gems safely tucked away. The night swallowed her whole, leaving Lord Draven and his men staring into the darkness, their quarry gone. Argoz's escape was the talk of Mirkdusk within days. Whispers of the goblin who had outwitted Lord Draven spread through the realm, her legend growing with each retelling. Some said she had stolen his very soul. Others claimed she had vanished into thin air, leaving only a taunting laugh in her wake. But Argoz didn't care about the rumours. She was already far from duskfall, deep in the wilderness, examining the celestial gem under the light of a campfire. It sparkled like a captured star, its light dancing across her fingers. It was hers now, a prize worthy of the risks she'd taken. Yet, even as she admired her treasure, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. She had made a powerful enemy in Lord Draven, and she knew he wouldn't rest until he had his revenge. But that was a worry for another day. For now she was free, with the stars overhead and the celestial gem in her grasp. With a satisfied smile, she tucked the gem away and lay back, letting the warmth of the fire and the thrill of victory lull her into sleep, already dreaming of her next adventure. Argoz sits in her hidden lair, nestled in the cliffs near Tanglewood Hollow, carefully polishing a small silver locket she recently acquired. Her treasures surround her, reflecting the faint glow of her campfire. She's been in hiding for weeks, lying low after her encounter with Draven. She knows the bounty is out there, and she's aware of the whispers in Mirkdusk, but she believes herself to be safe here, in the secrecy of her hideout. Suddenly she hears the faint crunch of footsteps outside, unusual in a place this remote. Her heart races and she quickly extinguishes the fire, slipping into the shadows. From her hiding spot, she sees a group of bounty hunters, their torches casting an ominous light as they search the area. They're organized, methodical, and far too skilled to be wandering by accident. As they close in, Argoz realizes with horror that they've been led here. Draven has somehow tracked her to one of her most secure hideouts. She grabs her essentials, the celestial gem, her dagger, and a small pouch of supplies, and slips out just as the hunters close in, their torches illuminating her carefully hidden stashes. She watches from a safe distance as they ransack her lair, taking every last trinket and destroying her hiding place. Her treasured collection, her memories, her symbols of pride, all gone in a matter of moments. Anger burns within her, but she knows that staying to fight would mean certain capture. With little else but her few carried possessions, Argoz flees to another hideout, a small, dimly lit safe house in the back alleys of Fogroot, hidden beneath an old warehouse. She moves carefully, slipping through the shadows as she navigates the familiar pathways. Here she keeps a stash of food, a few tools, and, most importantly, a cache of coins. It's a temporary shelter, a backup she's rarely used, but it feels secure. For now. As she enters the safe house, however, she senses that something is wrong. The air is heavy, too quiet, and the scent of stale smoke lingers. Her heart sinks as she discovers the truth. The stash has been emptied. Draven's hunters have already been here, taking everything of value and setting traps in her refuge. She narrowly avoids a snare, realizing with a chill that she's being systematically targeted. With nowhere else to go, she has no choice but to flee into the heart of Fogroot, blending with the night and hoping to escape notice. Each loss is stripping her down, taking away her familiar comforts and forcing her into the open. Desperate and running out of options, Argoz heads to one of her last remaining hideouts in the swampy Feymarsh. This location is as hidden as it is uncomfortable, a narrow, damp cavern hidden deep within the twisted roots of an ancient tree. She only ever stays here when she has no other choice. But as she approaches, she hears voices. She hides and listens, her heart pounding, as she realizes that another group of bounty hunters has already taken over the hideout, turning it into their temporary base as they search for her in the surrounding area. They speak in hushed tones about Draven's rewards, mentioning her by name and discussing her escape routes. Argoz fights back the surge of anger and desperation. She knows she can't take them on directly, but she also knows that she can't keep running. Every refuge has been stripped from her, every stash discovered, every ally out of reach or potentially compromised. As night falls, Argoz retreats into the swamp, muddy, exhausted, and with nothing left but the few belongings she carries. Her pride is wounded, her resources depleted, and her every move seems to be one step ahead of Draven's forces. She feels like a caged animal with fewer and fewer places to hide. In a last desperate act, she considers turning to Ezran the Trickster for help, even though she's unsure if he's been bought off by Draven. She's alone, vulnerable, and almost out of options. Her mind drifts to the legends of other realms, places she's heard of only in whispers, and wonders if escape beyond Mirkdusk might be her only hope. This is Argoz, at her lowest point, on the edge of despair but still holding on to a sliver of her rebellious spirit. She's ready to risk everything, even her life, for a way out of Draven's reach. It's only then that she starts to consider the unthinkable, fleeing to a realm called Earth. By this point, Argoz is drained. Each loss, each betrayal, and each narrow escape has chipped away at her confidence, leaving her raw and vulnerable. She is battered, both physically and mentally, with mud-streaked clothes and barely enough provisions to sustain her through the night. Her last remaining possessions are her dagger, the celestial gem, and a small pouch of rations. Lord Draven's web is closing in around her. Every ally she once trusted is unreachable, either because they're on Draven's payroll or because they fear him too much to take her in. Argoz is beginning to realize that her only chance may lie beyond this realm, but for now she has one last hope. Ezran the Trickster, who may have just enough loyalty to provide a way out, or turn her in. Argoz decides to take a dangerous route through Tanglewood Hollow, a forest known for its twisting paths and ancient trees. It's easy to get lost here, which is why she's chosen it. She hopes it will buy her some time. But the forest is eerily quiet, with only the faint rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl breaking the silence. As she moves through the shadows, Argoz feels the hairs on the back of her neck prickling. She's learned to trust these instincts, honed over years of thievery and escape. Suddenly, a glint catches her eye, a metallic shimmer among the trees. She ducks behind a boulder just as an arrow whizzes past her, embedding itself in the bark where she had been standing. Her heart races as she realizes it's an ambush. A group of Draven's hunters has tracked her here, waiting in the darkness to take her down. She scrambles, dodging between trees and rocks, her mind racing for an escape plan. She manages to evade the first few arrows, using the darkness to her advantage, but she knows she can't keep this up for long. The hunters are relentless, closing in with every step. She's nearly out of options when she spots a narrow crevice in the rocks, a small hiding place that might buy her a few precious moments. Argoz squeezes into the crevice, barely breathing as the hunter's footsteps draw closer. She presses herself flat against the cold stone, clutching the celestial gem tightly, hoping that they won't notice her hiding spot. She hears their voices gruff and irritated as they search the area. "Where did she go?" one of them mutters, clearly frustrated. "Spread out," another commands. "Draven wants her alive. The reward is double if she's brought in breathing." Argoz grits her teeth, resisting the urge to scoff. Alive or dead, she knows Draven will make an example of her. Her mind races, considering her options. She could wait them out, but that would mean staying vulnerable for far too long. She could fight, but with her dwindling energy and supplies, it would be a gamble. As they move further away, she takes a risk. She slips out of the crevice, silent as a shadow, and darts deeper into the forest. It's a dangerous move, but she knows that staying still would only give them more time to corner her. She uses the trees for cover, her footsteps muffled by the mossy ground, until she's finally far enough away to catch her breath. Exhausted and knowing that she can't keep running, Argoz makes a desperate decision. She will go to Fogroot and seek out Ezran the Trickster. They share a complicated past, a mix of mutual respect and occasional betrayal. But she knows that if anyone can help her slip out of Mirkdusk, or hide long enough to come up with a new plan, it's him. Fogroot is a town filled with misfits and scoundrels, a place where loyalty is bought and secrets are currency. She knows that it's risky to enter such a populated area with a bounty on her head, but at this point, she's willing to risk it all. As she sneaks into Fogroot under the cover of darkness, her face hidden beneath her hood, she feels eyes on her everywhere. Every shadow, every stranger could be a threat. The reward Draven has placed on her head is tempting for anyone, and she's painfully aware that her presence here is dangerous. She finds her way to the Crooked Fang, a dingy tavern where Ezran is known to do business. Slipping inside, she scans the room for his familiar face, but instead of Ezran, she spots a familiar figure in a dark corner, a bounty hunter from Draven's forces. He hasn't seen her yet, but it's only a matter of time. Just as she's about to leave, a hand grabs her wrist, pulling her into the shadows. She gasps, ready to fight, but stops when she sees Ezran's face. He's grinning, his eyes twinkling with that usual mischievous glint. "Always in trouble, aren't we?" he whispers. "Trouble follows me, Ezran," she retorts, trying to keep her tone light despite her fear. They sit at a secluded table, away from prying eyes, and she explains her situation, telling him about Draven's relentless pursuit and her dwindling options. Ezran listens, nodding thoughtfully, but there's a strange look in his eyes that makes her uneasy. "Help me get out of Mirkdusk," she says, her voice barely a whisper. "You owe me." Ezran leans back, a sly smile playing on his lips. "I might be able to help," he says slowly, "but there's something you should know." Her heart sinks. "What is it?" He shrugs, feigning nonchalance. "Word on the street is that Draven's upped the bounty. He's offering a fortune for you, Argoz. Enough to buy loyalty from even the closest friends." A chill runs down her spine as she realizes what he's saying. She can see it in his eyes, the way his hand rests near the hidden dagger at his side. He's considering it. She's become a prize, even to those she once trusted. Before he can act, she grabs the nearest mug and hurls it at his face, creating enough of a distraction to bolt from the table. She doesn't look back as she dashes out of the tavern, knowing that Ezran has already alerted the bounty hunter inside. The bounty hunter spots her the moment she exits the tavern, and a chase ensues through the winding, narrow streets of Fogroot. Argoz weaves through the alleyways, using her knowledge of the town to her advantage. She hears shouts behind her, more hunters joining the pursuit. Her options are running out, and she knows that if they catch her, it's all over. With no safe houses left, nowhere to hide, and betrayal at every corner, Argoz is forced to flee toward the last place she thought she'd ever go, the Ruins of Eldermire. It's a haunted, treacherous place, but she knows it holds something the others fear, portals to other realms. With the hunters hot on her heels, Argoz reaches the edge of the Ruins of Eldermire. She can see the faint shimmer of a portal among the ancient stones, flickering with unstable energy. She hesitates only a moment, her heart pounding as she glances back at the approaching figures. Draven's hunters have cornered her, their faces alight with the promise of reward. Taking a deep breath, she leaps through the portal, vanishing into the unknown as the hunters reach the ruins, left staring in frustration at the empty space where she once stood. The portal shimmers violently as Argoz leaps through, clutching the celestial gem tight to her chest. The sensation is unlike anything she's ever experienced, an overwhelming pull that rips her from one reality to the next. For a moment, she feels weightless, her senses bombarded by swirling lights and a deafening hum. Then, with a sudden jolt, she's hurled forward. The cool night air hits her like a wave as she stumbles to her knees, gasping for breath. She's on solid ground again, her fingers digging into damp sand. A strange, rhythmic sound surrounds her, the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. She lifts her head, her sharp yellow eyes adjusting to the dim light of the crescent moon above. Before her lies a vast expanse of water, dark and endless, reflecting the faint glow of the night sky. The air smells clean, crisp, with a faint tang of something unfamiliar. Behind her, tall trees loom, their silhouettes stark against the stars. This is not Mirkdusk. This is somewhere else entirely. Argoz stands slowly, taking in her surroundings. Her keen instincts tell her she's alone. No immediate danger, no sign of Draven's hunters. For the first time in weeks, she feels a momentary sense of relief. But that relief is short-lived as she notices the unfamiliar cold seeping through her clothes. Her leather armor, scuffed and worn from weeks of running, offers little protection against the chilly night air. She wraps her cloak tighter around her, her sharp teeth chattering slightly as she surveys the strange new world. Her gaze falls on the lights in the distance, a cluster of them glowing faintly on the horizon. Intrigued and wary, she begins to make her way toward them, her bare feet sinking into the sand before transitioning to the soft crunch of gravel as she nears a paved road. The road itself is unlike anything she's ever seen, smooth and black with strange yellow lines painted on it. She crouches low, watching as a pair of glowing lights approach rapidly. A deafening roar follows as a car speeds past, its headlights momentarily blinding her. Argoz leaps back, hissing in alarm, her heart pounding as she clutches the celestial gem. What kind of beast was that? She mutters to herself, glancing nervously at the now empty road. This place is madness. Argoz follows the road cautiously, sticking to the shadows as she moves closer to the glowing lights of the city. As she approaches, the trees give way to buildings, strange, boxy structures with glass windows and metal walls. She spots a gas station first, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the quiet night. The smell of gasoline and fried food wafts toward her, unfamiliar and unpleasant. She peers inside, her sharp eyes taking in the rows of colourful packaging and shiny objects. Her fingers twitch with instinctive greed, but she holds back, watching as a lone cashier flips through a magazine, oblivious to her presence. Beyond the gas station, she sees more lights, more activity, a small but bustling area filled with late-night diners, convenience stores, and parked cars. The city isn't large, but to Argoz, it's overwhelming. The constant hum of electricity, the strange mechanical noises, and the faint chatter of distant voices set her nerves on edge. As Argoz explores the outskirts of Traverse City, she notices a man exiting a diner, jingling his keys and whistling softly. The faint glint of metal catches her eye. a chain dangling from his belt, its golden surface gleaming in the streetlight. Her goblin instincts kick in immediately. She follows him quietly, sticking to the shadows as he makes his way to a nearby alley. Just as he fumbles with his keys to unlock his car, Argoz strikes. Quick as a flash, she snatches the chain from his belt and darts away, her heart racing with exhilaration. "Hey!" the man shouts, spinning around. "What the—" But Argoz is already gone, slipping into the darkness with her prize. She ducks into a narrow alley, inspecting the golden chain with a mix of pride and fascination. It's not magical, she realizes, but its shine is enough to satisfy her for now. Her moment of triumph is interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps. She turns to see the man, now joined by two others, all armed with flashlights and looking none too pleased. "Looks like we've got a thief," one of them says, his voice laced with annoyance. Argoz growls low in her throat, clutching the chain tightly. "You think you can catch me, humans?" she hisses, baring her sharp teeth. The men give chase, their shouts echoing through the quiet streets. Argoz moves like a shadow, weaving through alleys and scaling fences with ease, her small stature and agility giving her the upper hand. But the unfamiliar terrain slows her down, slick asphalt, chain-link fences, and strange glowing signs that confuse her sense of direction. She eventually finds herself cornered in a small parking lot, the men closing in with cautious determination. She snarls, gripping her dagger and preparing to fight, but before she can make a move, a blaring siren pierces the night. Red and blue lights flash, and a police car pulls up, its doors swinging open as two officers step out. "Hands where we can see them," one of the officers commands, his flashlight trained on Argoz. She freezes, unsure of what to do. These humans look different from the others, more organized, more authoritative. For the first time, she feels truly trapped. Just as the officers close in, Argoz makes a split-second decision. She tosses the golden chain aside as a distraction and darts toward a storm drain at the edge of the lot. She slips inside, her small frame allowing her to disappear into the darkness just as the officers and the men converge. Inside the drain, she crouches low, her breathing shallow as she listens to the commotion above. She's shaken but unharmed, the celestial gem still safe in her possession. For now, she's escaped. But as she huddles in the damp, foul-smelling tunnel, she realizes just how alien and dangerous this new world is. She'll need to learn its ways quickly if she's going to survive, and find a way to stay one step ahead of both its inhabitants and Draven's inevitable pursuit. Huddled in the damp storm drain, Argoz cradled the celestial gem, her fingers tracing its smooth, glowing surface. The gem had always emitted a faint, ethereal light, but now it seemed brighter, almost alive. Its glow pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of some hidden force within. "What are you hiding from me, my pretty?" Argoz muttered, narrowing her sharp yellow eyes at the gem. She felt warmth radiating from it, an unfamiliar sensation that sent a shiver down her spine. Back in Mirkdusk, the gem had been inert. A beautiful prize, but nothing more. Now, in this strange realm, it felt awake. She watched as the light inside the gem shifted, forming strange patterns that danced across its surface. For a moment she thought she could hear a faint hum, almost like a whisper. It spoke no words she could understand, but it carried an urgency that set her teeth on edge. The gem wasn't just reacting to this new world. It was trying to tell her something. Argoz's contemplation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps above. The humans hadn't given up their search. The rhythmic thud of boots on pavement echoed through the night, accompanied by muffled voices. "She couldn't have gone far," one said, his flashlight sweeping the area. Argoz tensed, clutching the gem tightly. She knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. The humans were relentless, their strange tools and organization unlike anything she'd faced in Mirkdusk. With no allies, no resources, and no knowledge of this world, she was at a disadvantage. The footsteps grew louder, and she realized they were heading toward the drain's entrance. Panic bubbled in her chest. She glanced down at the gem, its light intensifying as if responding to her fear. Now would be a good time for some magic, she muttered under her breath. Just as the first flashlight beam cut through the darkness of the drain, a low, rumbling growl echoed from the shadows. The sound was deep and guttural, sending a chill down Argoz's spine. She froze, her instincts screaming at her to stay still. The growl grew louder, reverberating through the tunnel. The humans hesitated, their lights flickering nervously as they scanned the area. "What the hell was that?" one of them whispered. Before they could react, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, imposing being with glowing eyes and a sleek, wolf-like form. Its fur shimmered faintly under the flashlight's beam, and its teeth gleamed as it let out another menacing growl. The humans stumbled back, shouting in alarm. "It's a monster!" one yelled, dropping his flashlight as they turned and fled. Argoz remained crouched, her dagger at the ready, as the creature turned its gaze on her. Its glowing eyes softened, and it let out a low, almost resigned sigh before shifting forms. Before her eyes, the wolf-like figure transformed into a human, tall, lean, with dark hair and a faint smirk. "You're welcome," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "I assume those weren't your friends?" Argoz narrowed her eyes, still clutching the gem protectively. "Who are you?" The man stepped closer, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Name's Caleb," he said. "Let's just say I have a knack for dealing with things that go bump in the night. And you, little goblin, are bumping pretty loudly." Argoz didn't lower her dagger, eyeing Caleb warily. "How do you know what I am?" Caleb chuckled, leaning casually against the wall of the drain. "You're not exactly subtle. The green skin, the sharp teeth, the shiny obsession. You stick out like a sore thumb around here. Lucky for you, I don't work for those bounty hunters." Her grip on the dagger tightened. "Lucky for you, I don't trust anyone." "Fair enough," Caleb said, shrugging. "But if you want to survive in this world, you're going to need some help. And judging by that shiny rock you're clutching, I'd say you've got more trouble on the way." Argoz hesitated, glancing down at the gem. Its glow had softened, but she could still feel its warmth, its strange energy pulsing faintly in her hands. She didn't know what Caleb's intentions were, but she couldn't deny that he was right. She needed help. "What do you want from me?" she asked cautiously. "Nothing yet," Caleb replied. "But I've got a feeling we're on the same side. You've got enemies, I've got enemies, and this little gem of yours? It's putting out some serious vibes that are going to attract a lot more than just bounty hunters." Argoz scowled. "I don't need a partner." "No," Caleb said with a grin, "but you need a guide. And lucky for you, I know this city like the back of my hand." As Caleb led her out of the storm drain and into the quiet streets, Argoz noticed something strange. The celestial gem's glow intensified as they passed certain areas, its patterns shifting and swirling more rapidly. At one point, it grew so bright that she had to cover it with her cloak to avoid drawing attention. "What's it doing?" she muttered. Caleb glanced at the gem, his expression serious for the first time. "It's reacting to something," he said. "This world might not have magic like yours, but there's still power here. Hidden, forgotten. That gem is connected to it." Argoz frowned, her mind racing. Could the gem be more than just a treasure? Could it hold the key to something greater, something that could tip the scales in her favor? Before she could dwell on it, Caleb stopped abruptly, his sharp eyes scanning the street ahead. "We've got company," he said quietly. Argoz followed his gaze and saw a group of figures emerging from the shadows, tall, armored, and unmistakably not human. Draven's hunters had found her. "Time to run," Caleb said, pulling her into an alley. "Welcome to Earth, Goblin. Hope you're ready for the ride." The sun rose over the quiet streets of Traverse City, casting a warm golden light that illuminated the strange new world Argoz now inhabited. She sat in the small, abandoned maintenance shed Caleb had led her to, examining the celestial gem with intense curiosity. The gem's glow had changed since arriving on Earth, its patterns now forming intricate, fluid shapes that seemed alive. Caleb watched from the corner, leaning against the wall with a bemused expression. "Still trying to figure it out?" he asked. Argoz nodded, her sharp yellow eyes narrowed in concentration. "It's different here. Back in Mirkdusk, it was just a pretty thing. Now it feels like it's listening." She held the gem up to the light, and as she did, a strange warmth spread through her fingers. The patterns on its surface shifted rapidly, and suddenly a tingling sensation coursed through her body. Argoz gasped as she looked down at her hands. Her green skin was fading, replaced by a pale, human-like hue. Her sharp claws receded, her features softening and reshaping. Caleb straightened, his casual demeanor giving way to surprise. "Well, that's new." Argoz stared at her reflection in a cracked mirror across the room. She didn't recognize herself. Where once stood a goblin thief, now stood a human woman with faintly familiar features. Her green eyes remained, their glow dimmed but still present, and a small streak of her dark hair retained its signature goblin spikes. "What is this?" she whispered, touching her face. "The gem," Caleb said, stepping closer. "It's not just shiny, is it? Looks like it's got some serious magic tied to it." Argoz turned to him, her expression a mix of fear and wonder. "If I can do this, what else can it do?" Unbeknownst to Argoz, the gem's transformation had done more than just change her appearance. The activation of its magic had severed the tracking curse Draven had placed on it. Back in Mirkdusk, Draven's sorcerers worked frantically, their spells fizzling uselessly as they tried to locate the gem. "She's gone," one of them said, his voice trembling. "The connection has been severed." Draven's fury was palpable, his voice cold and deadly. "Find her," he hissed. "I don't care if it takes an army. That gem is the key to everything." But without the gem's signal to guide them, his forces were left blind, grasping at shadows in their hunt for Argoz. Over the next few days, Caleb became an unlikely guide for Argoz as she learned to navigate the strange world of Earth. With her newfound ability to alter her appearance, she could now walk among humans without drawing suspicion. The gem allowed her to shift her features, blending in with the people around her. "Rule number 1, Caleb said as they strolled through a busy marketplace. "Keep your head down. Humans don't expect to see magic here, so the less attention you draw, the better." Argoz nodded, adjusting her borrowed hoodie to cover the faint glow of the gem hanging from her neck. She marvelled at the bustling crowd around her, humans chatting, laughing, and going about their lives without a care in the world. It was a far cry from the treacherous streets of Mirkdusk. "Rule number 2, Caleb continued. "Don't steal anything unless you're absolutely sure you can get away with it. This world has cameras everywhere, and the last thing you need is the cops after you." Argoz smirked, her fingers itching as she passed a jewelry stand glinting with gold and silver. "Where's the fun in that?" Caleb rolled his eyes. "You've got bigger problems than shiny things, goblin." Despite Caleb's warnings, Argoz couldn't resist the lure of treasure. One evening, while Caleb was distracted with a contact in the city, she slipped into a high-end boutique, drawn to the sparkling display of jewelry in the window. She moved like a shadow, her goblin instincts kicking in as she slipped past the security cameras and disabled the alarm on a glass case. She reached for a diamond necklace, its brilliance almost too much to resist, when a voice behind her made her freeze. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Argoz spun around, her dagger at the ready, to find a woman standing in the shadows. The woman's presence was commanding, her pale skin and sharp features giving her an almost ethereal quality. Her eyes glowed faintly like embers, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was capable of. "Who are you?" Argoz demanded. The woman stepped closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. "Someone who knows what you're running from, and what you're carrying." Argoz tightened her grip on the dagger. "If you're with Draven, you're wasting your time." The woman raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing on her lips. Draven? No, I don't work for him. But that gem you have? It's going to attract more than just his hunters. Before Argoz could respond, the sound of sirens filled the air. The boutique's security system had triggered, and flashing red and blue lights approached rapidly. Come with me, the woman said, holding out her hand, unless you'd rather explain yourself to the humans. Reluctantly, Argoz took the woman's hand and together they fled the boutique, disappearing into the alleyways before the police arrived. The woman led her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, where she finally introduced herself. My name's Evelyn, she said, her glowing eyes studying Argoz intently. I'm a witch, and if you want to stay alive, you'll need my help. Argoz hesitated, glancing at Caleb, who had just caught up to them. I don't trust easily. Good, Evelyn said, her smile sharp, because trust is earned, not given. But I know what that gem can do, and I know how to keep you one step ahead of the forces hunting you. Argoz glanced down at the gem, its faint glow pulsing softly. She didn't have many options left, and if Evelyn knew the secrets of the gem, she might be the key to unlocking its full potential. Fine, Argoz said, but if you cross me, witch, I'll make you regret it. Evelyn's laughter echoed through the warehouse. I like you already. The air inside the abandoned warehouse was heavy with the scent of rust and decay. Dim light filtered through broken windows, casting jagged patterns across the concrete floor. Argoz perched on an overturned crate, her sharp eyes darting between Evelyn and Caleb as they stood near the doorway. The celestial gem rested in her palm, its faint glow pulsating softly, a constant reminder of the power she carried and the danger it attracted. Evelyn leaned against a rusted metal column, her ember-like eyes fixed on Argoz with an intensity that was both unsettling and intriguing. She toyed with the silver pendant around her neck, a faint smirk playing at her lips. You're new to all this, Evelyn began, her voice smooth and commanding. Earth's magic, its rules. It's not like the realm you came from. Here the lines between power and survival are razor thin. One misstep, and you'll find yourself crushed under the weight of forces you don't understand. Argoz raised an eyebrow, the corner of her mouth curling into a wry smile. And let me guess, you're going to teach me how to walk the line? Evelyn chuckled, the sound low and amused. Something like that. But first, you need to understand the rules. Earth isn't as mundane as it looks. Beneath the surface, there's a web of power, alliances, and secrets that you've already stumbled into. That gem of yours? It's a beacon, and not just to the likes of Draven. Argos's grip on the gem tightened. She glanced at Caleb, who remained quiet but watchful, his arms crossed as he leaned against the wall. Draven can't track it anymore, Argoz said. The curse is broken. Evelyn nodded. True, but breaking the curse didn't make the gem any less noticeable. Its magic hums like a siren to those who know how to listen. If you want to stay alive, you'll need to learn how to control it and how to keep it hidden. Argoz studied Evelyn for a moment, her goblin instincts warring with the part of her that recognized the truth in the witch's words. And you're offering to help me out of the goodness of your heart? Evelyn's smirk widened, her ember eyes glowing faintly. Hardly, but let's just say I have a vested interest in keeping things balanced. Chaos might be fun to watch, but it's bad for business. The conversation was interrupted by a faint noise from outside, a low rumble like distant thunder. Caleb straightened, his posture tense as his eyes flicked toward the warehouse door. Evelyn held up a hand, her fingers glowing faintly as she muttered a few words under her breath. The air around them shimmered, a protective ward snapping into place. Trouble? Argoz asked, already reaching for the dagger at her side. Not yet, Evelyn replied, her voice calm, but it's always better to be prepared. Caleb stepped closer, his gaze lingering on the gem in Argoz's hand. She's right. That thing is going to attract all kinds of attention, and not just from Draven's goons. The pack will take notice eventually, and when they do, you'll wish they hadn't. The pack? Argoz frowned, her sharp eyes narrowing. Who are they? Evelyn sighed, brushing a strand of raven-black hair from her face. Think of them as Earth's supernatural enforcers. They keep the peace, or their version of it anyway. They're not exactly the friendly type, especially when it comes to things they don't understand, and trust me, they won't understand you. Or that gem, Caleb added. Argoz scowled, the weight of their warnings settling heavily on her shoulders. She'd spent her life running, hiding, and surviving by the skin of her teeth. But Earth was proving to be an entirely different beast. "And you expect me to just sit back and wait for them to come knocking?" she asked, her voice edged with defiance. "Not at all," Evelyn said, her smile sharp. "That's why you've got me." As the hours stretched into the night, Evelyn began to lay out the framework of Earth's supernatural world. She spoke of hidden realms, shadowy alliances, and the unspoken rules that governed the balance between power and chaos. Caleb chimed in occasionally, his remarks blunt but insightful, filling in the gaps where Evelyn's explanations veered into vagueness. Argoz listened carefully, her mind racing as she pieced together the puzzle of this new world. The Shadow Realm Bar, the Pack, factions like the Black Dawn, all of it was a tangled web of intrigue and danger. And at the centre of it all was the Celestial Gem, a prize that could tip the scales in any number of directions. "You'll need a base," Evelyn said finally, her tone matter of fact. "Somewhere safe to lay low while you figure out your next move. I have a place in mind, but it comes with strings attached." "Of course it does," Argoz muttered, earning a chuckle from Caleb. Evelyn ignored the comment, her ember eyes locking onto Argoz. "You'll also need to start building connections, allies, resources. This isn't Mirkdusk. You can't survive here on instinct alone." Argoz's fingers brushed against the gem, its faint warmth grounding her as she considered Evelyn's words. "And if I decide I don't need your help?" Evelyn's smile didn't falter, but her eyes darkened slightly. "Then you'd better hope you're a faster learner than I give you credit for. Because this world? It doesn't play fair." Argoz stared at her for a moment, weighing her options. Trust was a fragile thing, and she wasn't sure Evelyn or Caleb had earned hers yet. But the weight of the gem in her hand and the memory of Draven's hunters were enough to convince her. "For now," she said slowly, "I'll listen." Evelyn's smile returned, sharp and satisfied. "Smart choice, Goblin." And with that, the pieces began to fall into place. For better or worse, Argoz was stepping into a world far more dangerous and complex than she'd ever imagined. The warehouse was silent save for the faint rustle of wind slipping through broken panes of glass. Argoz sat cross-legged on a dusty crate, her sharp yellow eyes flicking between Evelyn and Caleb as they exchanged a look. "We're taking you somewhere important," Evelyn finally said, her ember-like eyes gleaming in the dim light. "A place that'll give you a clearer picture of what you're dealing with." Argoz tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. "And this place is?" "The Shadow Realm Bar," Caleb said, his voice calm and deliberate. "It's a nexus between the human and supernatural worlds. Think of it as neutral ground. You'll find answers there, and maybe a few allies." "Neutral ground?" Argoz snorted. "Sounds boring." Evelyn's smirk widened, her tone sharp. "Neutral doesn't mean harmless. The bar operates under strict rules, and you'd better learn them before you walk through the door. The last thing you want is to make an enemy out of everyone in there." Argoz leaned back, crossing her arms. "All right, witch, enlighten me." Evelyn stepped forward, her voice taking on a commanding edge. "Rule number 1, the truce. No fighting, no stealing, no malice of any kind. Once you cross that threshold, you leave your grudges at the door. Everyone is expected to behave." "Everyone?" Argoz arched a brow. "Even trolls and vampires?" Especially trolls and vampires, Caleb said, leaning against the wall. The truce is enforced by more than just bouncers. The bar itself has ways of dealing with anyone who breaks the rules. Argoz frowned. What kind of ways? Evelyn's smile was sharp. The kind that make you wish you'd listened. The second rule, Caleb continued, cutting through the tension, is respect. You don't touch what doesn't belong to you. That means no swiping shiny things, goblin. Argoz rolled her eyes but said nothing. Third rule, Evelyn said, her tone softening slightly. Don't overstep. The bar isn't just a place to drink, it's a crossroads. Alliances are formed there, deals are made, and secrets are traded. If you want to survive, you need to learn when to speak and when to stay quiet. Argoz leaned forward, her interest clearly piqued. Sounds like a treasure trove of information. It is, Caleb admitted, but it's also a minefield. One wrong move, and you'll find yourself in over your head. The three of them stepped out into the cool night air, the warehouse fading into the distance as they made their way toward the city. The streets were quiet, the hum of streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Evelyn led the way, her movements graceful and deliberate. Caleb walked beside Argoz, his sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. So, Argoz said, breaking the silence, what happens if someone breaks the truce? Evelyn didn't look back, her voice calm but firm. They don't leave the bar, not in one piece anyway. That sounds comforting, Argoz muttered, clutching the celestial gem tightly. It's rare, Caleb said, his tone almost reassuring. Most people who go there understand the stakes. The bar has a reputation. It's not just a place to drink, it's a safe zone. For some, it's the only one they've got. Argoz considered this, her mind racing with possibilities. A safe zone could be useful, especially with Draven's forces still out there. But the rules grated against her instincts, her goblin nature urging her to push boundaries and take risks. Anything else I should know? She asked, her voice laced with sarcasm. Just one thing, Evelyn said, turning to face her. Don't touch the door until I tell you. It's selective about who it lets in. The bar was unassuming from the outside, a weathered wooden structure with a flickering neon sign that simply read, Bar. Its exterior looked almost forgotten, tucked away on a quiet street as if it were hiding in plain sight. This is it? Argoz asked, her tone skeptical. Evelyn smirked. Don't judge a book by its cover, goblin. As they stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The interior was gritty and old, with dim lighting casting long shadows across worn leather booths and scuffed wooden floors. The faint hum of an old jukebox filled the air, accompanied by the clink of glasses and murmured conversations. Humans and those passing as human mingled freely, their activities seemingly mundane. But Argoz's sharp eyes caught glimpses of subtle oddities. A faint shimmer of magic here, an otherworldly glow there. At the back of the bar, an unassuming wooden door caught her attention. Its edges glowed faintly, almost imperceptibly, and she felt the celestial gem pulse softly in response. That's the door, Evelyn said, her voice low. Beyond it is the Shadow Realm bar, the real one. But remember the rules, Argoz. This isn't Mirkdusk. If you break them, there won't be anyone to save you. Argoz nodded, her fingers brushing against the gem. Got it. No fights, no stealing, no malice. And one more thing, Caleb added, his voice serious. Don't make any deals unless you know exactly what you're getting into. Words have power in places like this. Argoz smirked, her confidence masking the unease bubbling beneath the surface. I'll be on my best behaviour. Evelyn raised an eyebrow but said nothing, stepping toward the door. With a murmured word, she placed her hand on the wood, and the faint glow intensified. The air around them shimmered, and the door creaked open, revealing a threshold where the mundane melted away into the extraordinary. Argoz hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to stay back, but she pushed the fear aside, clutching the gem as she stepped through. The world on the other side was nothing short of breathtaking. The air in the Shadow Realm bar was electric, a charged hum of magic that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the dim, multicolored lights. Argoz stepped cautiously into the space, her eyes darting across the vast, otherworldly room. It was unlike anything she'd ever seen. High, arched ceilings adorned with glowing runes, stone walls that seemed to breathe, and a floor shimmering with shifting patterns that felt alive. The patrons were just as strange. Towering trolls, ethereal spirits, and other supernatural beings mingled freely, their true forms unveiled in this space of truce. Argoz tightened her grip on the celestial gem, its glow muted beneath her cloak. "Welcome to the Shadow Realm bar," Evelyn said, her voice smooth. "Try not to look too impressed." "I'm not impressed," Argoz muttered, but her wide eyes betrayed her. Caleb smirked. "Just don't touch anything or anyone, and you'll be fine." They moved through the room, weaving between groups of beings engaged in hushed conversations or watching the swirling patterns on the walls. Argos's gaze was drawn to the long bar counter, where bartenders poured drinks that fizzed and glowed with an almost hypnotic allure. "Who's the goblin?" a smooth, cutting voice called from the shadows. Argoz turned sharply, her instincts kicking in as she scanned the room for the source. From a booth near the bar, a figure rose, moving with a predator's grace. She was tall and slender, her raven-black hair cascading over her shoulders, framing a face that was both beautiful and dangerous. Her dark eyes gleamed with intensity, and a faint smirk played on her lips. "Rose," Evelyn said, her tone a mix of amusement and caution. "Of course you'd find us." "You make it sound like it was a challenge," Rose replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Her gaze flicked to Argoz, sharp and probing. "And who's this? Another one of your strays?" Argoz bristled, her fingers brushing the hilt of her dagger beneath her cloak. "I'm not a stray." Rose's smirk widened, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Oh, she talks. And feisty too. I like her." "She's with me," Evelyn said firmly, stepping between Rose and Argoz. "And she's off limits." "Relax, darling." Rose waved a hand dismissively, but her focus didn't waver from Argoz. "I'm just curious. It's not every day someone new waltzes in here with something that hums like that." She gestured faintly toward the gem, her tone casual but her meaning razor-sharp. Argoz's hand tightened around the gem instinctively. "What do you mean?" Rose tilted her head, her smirk growing. "Oh, sweetheart, you're practically glowing. Whatever you're carrying, it's singing loud enough to turn heads. And not just mine." "Leave it alone, Rose," Caleb said, his voice low and warning. Rose arched an eyebrow at him, a flicker of amusement crossing her face. "Since when are you the protective type, Caleb? I thought your thing was staying out of trouble." Caleb shrugged. "And I thought your thing was knowing when to back off." For a moment, the tension in the room thickened. Then Rose laughed, a melodic sound that carried an edge. "Fair enough. I'll behave. For now." Rose moved closer, her piercing gaze locking onto Argoz. "So, Goblin, what brings you to my little slice of heaven? A drink? A deal? Or are you just sightseeing?" Argoz hesitated, unsure how to navigate this conversation. Rose's presence was magnetic and unnerving, a mix of charm and danger that set her on edge. "I'm just passing through." Rose chuckled, her dark eyes gleaming. "Passing through. Oh, darling, no one just passes through the Shadow Realm bar. You're here for a reason. And if you don't know what that is yet, you'd better figure it out fast." "Maybe I don't want to," Argos shot back, her voice sharper than she intended. Rose's smirk didn't falter. "Oh, I like you," she said, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. "Spunky, clueless, and carrying enough magic to light up half the room. You'll fit in just fine." "Enough," Evelyn said, her tone cutting through the tension. "Rose, we don't have time for your games." "Games?" Rose feigned a look of mock offence, placing a hand over her chest. Evelyn, you wound me. I'm simply welcoming our new friend. She turned back to Argoz, her expression softening slightly, though the glint of mischief remained. Word of advice, Goblin. Watch your back. This place might have rules, but rules only work when everyone follows them. And trust me, not everyone does. As Rose stepped away, she paused, her gaze lingering on the gem beneath Argoz's cloak. Whatever you're carrying, keep it close, and keep it quiet. There are eyes everywhere, and not all of them are friendly. With that, she sauntered back to her booth, her laughter trailing behind her like a whisper. Evelyn exhaled sharply, shaking her head. She's trouble, Caleb muttered. She's the queen of trouble, Evelyn corrected. But she's not wrong. You need to be careful, Argoz. Argoz glanced between the two of them, her mind racing. The encounter had left her rattled, but there was something about Rose that intrigued her. She was dangerous, yes, but also sharp, confident, and undeniably in control. For now, Argoz decided to keep her head down and her guard up. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of her dealings with the so-called queen of the bar. The Shadow Realm. Bar pulsed with its usual energy, a swirl of supernatural beings, muted lights, and the faint hum of magic. Argoz's sharp eyes darted across the room as she followed Caleb and Evelyn through the crowd, trying to take it all in without gawking. Evelyn! Caleb! The smooth, familiar voice rang out like silk laced with steel. All three turned to see Rose lounging in her booth, her dark eyes gleaming with amusement. She gestured casually toward them with a slight tilt of her diamond-ringed hand. Why don't you bring your little friend over? Drinks are on me tonight. Caleb froze, narrowing his eyes. What's the catch, Rose? Rose placed a hand over her chest in mock offence. Catch? Can't a queen be generous every once in a while? You don't do generous, Evelyn said flatly. But she was already moving toward the booth, clearly unwilling to risk escalating whatever game Rose was playing. Caleb hesitated but followed, and after a brief moment of indecision, Argoz trailed behind. The booth was as luxurious as it could get in the Shadow Realm bar, tucked into a dark corner with plush, mismatched cushions that somehow managed to look expensive. A fresh round of drinks sat waiting, 2 glowing potions and a more mundane whiskey. Please sit, Rose purred, gesturing to the seats across from her. She lifted her glass, the crystal catching the light with a deliberate sparkle, and took a slow sip. You look like you could all use a drink. Argoz slid into the booth hesitantly, flanked by Caleb and Evelyn. Her sharp eyes caught the way Rose's diamond ring gleamed as she toyed with her glass, the light refracting into tiny rainbows across the table. So, Rose began, leaning back and fixing her gaze on Argoz. You must be the one making all the noise. It's not every day something as shiny as you walks into my bar. I'm not shiny, Argoz snapped before she could stop herself. Rose's smirk widened. Oh, but you are. And not just that little trinket you're hiding. She tapped her own chest lightly, as if sensing the celestial gem's faint hum. You've got a glow about you, darling. Makes me wonder what kind of trouble you've brought with you. Argoz stiffened, her hand instinctively brushing the gem beneath her cloak. Caleb placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Leave it, Rose. Leave it? Rose echoed, her tone dripping with mock indignation. I'm being hospitable. Bought you drinks, didn't I? She turned her attention back to Argoz, her dark eyes glinting with amusement. Tell me, Goblin, what's your drink of choice? A little something sweet? Or do you prefer something that burns? Argoz glared at her. I don't drink. Pity, Rose said with a faint shrug. But that's all right. You can still enjoy the company. As the conversation drifted, Rose leaned forward, propping her chin on her hand. She twisted the diamond ring on her finger, turning it slowly so the light refracted and scattered in dazzling bursts. Argoz's sharp yellow eyes flicked to the ring despite herself, her fingers twitching beneath the table. "Something wrong?" Rose asked, feigning innocence. "You seem distracted." "I'm not," Argoz said sharply, her jaw tightening. Rose chuckled, her gaze never leaving Argoz. "Oh, darling, you're terrible at lying. It's endearing, really." "That's enough," Evelyn cut in, her voice edged with warning. "She's new. Stop playing games." "Games?" Rose's smirk turned razor-sharp. "This isn't a game, Evelyn. I'm just getting to know her." Before Evelyn could respond, Rose reached into her pouch and pulled out a small golden coin. The intricate patterns etched across its surface caught the light, gleaming temptingly. She turned it over in her fingers with deliberate care before sliding it across the table to Argoz. "Here," Rose said, her tone almost gentle. "A little something to remember me by. Consider it a token of friendship." Argoz stared at the coin, her instincts screaming at her. It was small, insignificant compared to the treasures she'd hoarded back in Mirkdusk, but it sparkled in a way that made her fingers itch. "Don't," Caleb warned, his voice low. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "She's testing you." Rose tilted her head, her smirk softening into something almost playful. "Testing? No, no, just being friendly. Isn't that what friends do?" The tension hung heavy in the air as Argoz hesitated, her gaze locked on the coin. Slowly, deliberately, she reached out and picked it up, her sharp claws brushing its smooth surface. Rose's smile widened as she raised her glass in a mock toast. "Welcome to the Shadow Realm, darling." As they left Rose's booth, Caleb and Evelyn pulled Argoz aside. Caleb's expression was dark, his voice low. "You shouldn't have taken that." "She said it was a gift," Argoz said defensively, slipping the coin into her pocket. "It's never just a gift with Rose," Evelyn muttered, her tone sharp. "She's setting you up for something." Argoz frowned but said nothing, the weight of the coin heavy in her pocket. Deep down, she knew they were right, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just taken her first step into a game she didn't yet understand. As they left the booth, Argoz slipped the golden coin into her pocket, her thoughts churning. Caleb and Evelyn flanked her, their expressions grim. "You need to be careful with her," Caleb said quietly. "Rose doesn't give gifts without expecting something in return." "She hasn't asked for anything," Argoz muttered, though the weight of the coin in her pocket felt heavier than it should. "Not yet," Evelyn said darkly, "but she will." "Speaking of asking for things," Rose's smooth voice cut through their hushed conversation. The trio turned to see her standing behind them, her smirk firmly in place. "That little gem you're carrying, it's practically screaming to be admired." Argoz's hand instinctively went to her cloak, where the celestial gem was hidden. "I'm not showing it here," she said sharply. "Of course not," Rose replied, her tone almost soothing. "This isn't the place for such treasures. But I'd love a closer look. Privately." Evelyn crossed her arms, her ember-like eyes narrowing. And why would she do that? Rose tilted her head, her smirk softening into something almost sincere. "Because I might be able to tell her something about it. I've seen things like it before, things with power. But if you'd rather wander around in ignorance, that's fine by me." Argoz hesitated, her instincts warring with her curiosity. Caleb and Evelyn exchanged a glance, but before they could intervene, Rose added, "Silas has a perfectly good office we can use. He won't mind." Without waiting for an answer, Rose turned on her heel and began walking toward the back of the bar, her diamond ring catching the light with every step. The office was tucked away behind an unassuming door near the bar's back wall. Silas, the Shadow Realm bar's enigmatic manager, was leaning against his desk, a towering figure with a quiet, commanding presence. His silver hair caught the faint light from the glowing runes on the walls, and his piercing gaze softened slightly as Rose entered. "Silas, darling," Rose said, her tone sweet. "We need the office for a moment. You don't mind, do you?" Silas raised an eyebrow, his gaze flicking briefly to the group behind her before returning to Rose. As long as you don't make a mess. Rose laughed, stepping close to him and brushing a kiss against his cheek. You're a gem, as always. Silas sighed, a faint smile tugging at his lips, and gestured for them to enter. Don't take too long. Rose ushered the group inside, closing the door behind them. The office was neat and well organized, its walls lined with shelves of ancient tomes and artifacts. A single sturdy desk dominated the space, and Rose motioned for Argoz to sit across from it. Well, Goblin, Rose said, settling gracefully into the chair behind the desk. Let's see what you've got. Reluctantly, Argoz pulled the celestial gem from beneath her cloak, its light pulsing faintly in her hand. She placed it on the desk, her sharp eyes never leaving Rose as the woman leaned forward, her expression finally serious. Rose reached out, her movements deliberate and reverent, and picked up the gem. The light within it seemed to brighten at her touch, its patterns shifting like liquid silver. Interesting, Rose murmured, tilting the gem so the light refracted across her face. Very interesting. What is it? Argoz asked, her tone edged with suspicion. Rose didn't answer immediately, her focus entirely on the gem. She turned it over in her hands, her dark eyes scanning its surface as if reading something invisible. Finally, she set it down, leaning back in her chair with a thoughtful expression. I have a hunch, she said slowly, but I'll need to consult a few contacts to confirm it. What kind of hunch? Caleb pressed, his tone wary. Rose's smirk returned, though it was tempered by something almost respectful. Let's just say this little gem of yours is more than a pretty trinket. It has a purpose, a powerful one, but it's tied to something much larger than you, Goblin. And if I'm right, it could tip the scales of more than one realm. Argoz's stomach twisted. You're being vague. Because vagueness is safer for now, Rose replied smoothly. But don't worry, darling, I'll give it back. True to her word, she slid the gem across the desk, and Argoz snatched it up, tucking it back beneath her cloak. Rose stood, her diamond ring catching the light again as she adjusted it. I'll reach out to a few old friends. Discreetly, of course. No one will know about this unless I want them to. Why are you helping? Evelyn asked, her tone sharp. Rose smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Let's just say I enjoy solving puzzles. And this one? She gestured faintly to the gem. It's one of the most intriguing I've seen in years. She stepped toward the door, pausing to glance back at Argoz. You're lucky, Goblin. That gem of yours might just be your ticket to survival, or your death warrant. Either way, it's going to be fun to watch. With that, she opened the door, leaving them alone in the office. Caleb sighed, running a hand through his hair. This is bad, he muttered. It's Rose, Evelyn said. It's always bad. Argoz didn't respond, her fingers brushing against the gem as she stared at the door. She had the answers she'd come for, but Rose's parting words lingered like a shadow, heavy and foreboding. The trio stepped out of Silas's office, the weight of the evening pressing heavily on their shoulders. Argoz kept a tight grip on the celestial gem beneath her cloak, her sharp eyes darting nervously around the bar's surreal interior. I think we're done here, Caleb said, his voice low. We've had enough of Rose's games for one night. Evelyn nodded in agreement. Let's go. The sooner we're out of here, the better. Argoz didn't argue. The gem felt heavier now, as though Rose's words had awakened something inside it, something she wasn't sure she wanted to understand. Without another word, they moved toward the door, weaving through the supernatural patrons who paid them little mind. As they stepped back through the glowing doorway and into the mundane side of the bar, the contrast was jarring. The human-facing bar was dimly lit and unassuming, its creaky booths and peeling wallpaper a far cry from the grandeur of the Shadow Realm. The faint hum of magic was gone, replaced by the muted clink of glasses and murmured conversations. Caleb pushed open the front door, and the cool night air washed over them as they stepped out onto the quiet street. For a moment, the tension began to lift. until Evelyn stopped abruptly, her sharp gaze fixed on a shadowy corner of the bar's patio. "There she is," Evelyn muttered, her tone both exasperated and wary. Rose was seated at a small outdoor table, her legs crossed elegantly as she leaned back in her chair. A man sat across from her, his features obscured by the shadows, but his tense posture and quick glances toward her suggested he was far less comfortable than she was. Rose's demeanour, by contrast, was entirely at ease. She was laughing softly at something the man had said, her dark eyes glinting with amusement. As if sensing their presence, she glanced toward the trio and gave them a slow, deliberate smile. Then, as if to punctuate the moment, she raised her hand in a casual wave, the diamond on her finger catching the streetlight. Argoz stiffened, her jaw tightening. What is she doing out here? "Being Rose," Caleb said flatly. Evelyn folded her arms, her ember-like eyes narrowing. "She's always working something. Whatever it is, it's none of our business." "She's watching us," Argoz muttered, her sharp eyes locked on Rose. "Of course she is," Evelyn said. "That's what she does. Let's go." But even as they turned and started walking, Argoz couldn't shake the feeling of Rose's gaze following them. When she glanced back over her shoulder, Rose was still smiling, her posture relaxed as she rested her chin on her hand. She said something to the man across from her, who nodded nervously, and then she laughed, a soft, melodic sound that echoed faintly in the quiet night. The streets were quiet as the trio made their way toward their makeshift lair, a small, nondescript apartment Caleb had secured for them. The tension between them was palpable, and it was Caleb who finally broke the silence. "She's going to be a problem." "She's always a problem," Evelyn said, "but she's also useful. That's why we deal with her." "For now," Caleb said, his tone heavy with warning. He glanced at Argoz, his expression unreadable. "You've got to be careful around her, Goblin. Rose doesn't do anything without a reason." "I can handle myself," Argoz snapped, though her voice lacked conviction. Evelyn sighed. "We're not saying you can't, but Rose has been playing this game a lot longer than you. If you're not careful, you'll end up being just another piece on her board." Argoz didn't respond, her fingers brushing against the gem beneath her cloak. She couldn't deny the pull Rose had on her, the mix of charm, danger, and the promise of answers. But something about the encounter left her uneasy, and the sight of Rose on the human side of the bar, laughing and scheming in the shadows, lingered in her mind like a ghost. The night was quiet as Argoz, Caleb, and Evelyn walked briskly back to their warehouse. The streets were mostly empty, lit only by the faint glow of streetlights and the occasional flicker of neon signs. Argoz kept glancing over her shoulder, the weight of the celestial gem pressing heavily against her chest. "This city's too quiet," Argoz muttered, her sharp yellow eyes scanning the shadows. "It's better that way," Caleb replied. "Fewer prying eyes." Evelyn remained silent, her ember-like eyes fixed on the road ahead. But as they rounded the corner to their street, she suddenly stopped, her posture tensing. "What is it?" Argoz asked. Caleb's gaze followed Evelyn's, and his expression darkened. "Cops?" Ahead of them, the warehouse next to their own was bathed in the red and blue flashes of police lights. Squad cars lined the street, officers clustered at the perimeter. The three of them ducked into an alley, staying hidden as they watched the scene unfold. From their vantage point, they saw a group of figures emerge from the shadows, moving with quiet precision. The police officers at the perimeter stepped aside without protest, their faces etched with a mix of frustration and resignation. "That's not normal," Argoz whispered. "Who are they?" "The pack," Evelyn said grimly. "Gunner's team." "The ones you warned me about?" Argoz asked, her voice tinged with curiosity and unease. Evelyn nodded. "And now you see why." Gunner led the team, his cybernetic arm gleaming faintly in the dim light. His movements were deliberate, his presence commanding as he signalled for the others to follow. Eli trailed close behind, scanning the air with a glowing device, her expression tight with concentration. Karina unsheathed her katana, the blade catching the light with a deadly shimmer, while Darren adjusted Thunderstrike across his shoulder, his posture relaxed, but ready. "What are they doing here?" Argoz asked, her voice low. "Something big," Caleb murmured, "and dangerous." They watched as the team disappeared into the warehouse, leaving the police to hold the perimeter. The tension in the air was palpable, a sense of impending violence that made Argoz's skin prickle. Inside the warehouse, muffled sounds of movement and voices carried through the night. Then, a guttural roar shattered the stillness, echoing through the empty streets. Argoz flinched, her instincts screaming at her to run. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Something corrupted." As they watched, the roar was followed by the faint sound of a gunshot, then another. The warehouse windows flickered with bursts of light, and the silhouette of a man, wild and erratic, appeared briefly against the glass. "That's not human," Argoz said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. "No," Caleb agreed, "and that's why the pack is here." Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the three of them watched, tension coiling in the air. Finally, the pack emerged from the warehouse, their movements swift and coordinated. They carried a man between them, his body slumped and trembling, veins pulsing with a sickly black glow. "That's the drug," Evelyn said softly, her expression grim. "It amplifies power, but it corrupts, destroys." The team moved quickly, loading the man into an unmarked vehicle at the back of the building. Darren broke off, heading toward the police sergeant who was waiting near the perimeter. "Who's that guy?" Argoz asked, nodding toward Darren. "Pack liaison," Caleb replied. "Smooth talker. He handles the humans, so they don't ask too many questions." Darren's conversation with the sergeant was brief, punctuated by the occasional gesture toward the warehouse. Whatever he said, it worked. The sergeant scowled but motioned for his officers to retreat. The three of them watched in silence as the pack finished their extraction, moving with an efficiency that was both impressive and unnerving. As the last of the vehicles pulled away, Evelyn exhaled slowly. "They've got it under control. For now." Argoz frowned, her sharp eyes lingering on the now empty warehouse. And what happens if they don't? Caleb's gaze was dark. Then everyone loses. The trio moved silently through the dark streets, the tension from the warehouse still coiled tightly around them. Argoz walked a few steps behind Evelyn and Caleb, her sharp yellow eyes flicking to every shadow, every corner, her instincts humming with unease. "What was that thing?" she asked finally, breaking the silence. "The guy with the black veins." "A victim," Evelyn replied without looking back. "Of the drug." Argoz frowned. "Victim? He didn't look like a victim. He looked like something out of a nightmare." "Nightmares don't choose you," Caleb said, his tone grim. "This drug does." Argoz opened her mouth to press further but stopped herself. Something had been nagging at her since they left the warehouse, a flicker of movement at the edge of her vision that she couldn't shake. Finally, she asked, "Did you see the guy on the perimeter?" Caleb glanced over his shoulder. "Which one?" "The one who disappeared," Argoz said. "He was there 1 second, gone the next, like he melted into the shadows." Evelyn and Caleb exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. "Shade," Evelyn said finally, her voice low, "one of Gunner's team." "What's his deal?" Argoz asked, her curiosity piqued. "Stealth," Caleb replied. "He's their scout, their infiltrator. He's different." "Different how?" Argoz pressed, her sharp instincts telling her there was more to the story. Evelyn hesitated, her ember-like eyes narrowing as she considered her words. "Shade's not like the rest of them. No cybernetic enhancements, no flashy weapons, just shadows. He moves through them like they're part of him." "He's their ghost," Caleb added. "If you see him, it's because he wants you to." Argoz's frown deepened. "And why would he want to be seen?" To send a message, Evelyn said simply. Argos's hand instinctively went to the celestial gem beneath her cloak, its warmth a small comfort against the growing unease in her chest. Do you think he saw us? Evelyn shook her head. If Shade wanted to know we were there, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Then why bring it up? Caleb asked, his tone sharp. We stayed out of their way. Let's keep it that way. Argoz fell silent, but her mind churned with possibilities. The pack had seemed untouchable, their precision and discipline unmatched. But Shade, he was something else entirely, something that made her instincts bristle. The warehouse was quiet, its air filled with the faint smell of rust and damp concrete. It wasn't much, but it was safe, for now. Evelyn had claimed a corner, leaning against a stack of crates with her arms crossed, her ember-like eyes dim as she stared into the distance. Caleb had already stretched out on a makeshift cot, his breathing slow and steady as he drifted into sleep. Argoz sat on a frayed cushion in the middle of the room, her knees drawn to her chest. The celestial gem rested in her lap, its faint glow pulsing softly in the dim light. She traced her claws along its smooth surface, the shifting patterns within it both mesmerizing and maddening. Everything felt too loud in her head. The encounter with Rose, the pack's terrifying efficiency, the sight of that man twisted by the drug. It was all too much. She let out a shaky breath, her fingers tightening around the gem. What the hell am I doing? She muttered under her breath. Evelyn's voice cut through the silence, calm but sharp. You're surviving. Argoz flinched, glancing toward her. She hadn't realized Evelyn was still awake. It doesn't feel like it, she admitted. Evelyn's gaze softened slightly, but she didn't move from her spot. You're alive. That's what matters right now. Argoz scoffed, leaning back against the wall. Barely. And for what? I've got Draven's hunters after me, a shiny rock that everyone seems to want, and no idea what the hell I'm supposed to do next. You'll figure it out, Evelyn said simply. Will I? Argoz snapped, her voice rising. I don't even know why I'm here. Why this stupid gem chose me. Why… Her voice broke and she bit her lip, forcing herself to stop. Evelyn didn't reply, her expression unreadable. After a moment, she turned away, leaving Argoz to her thoughts. The room felt colder as the silence settled again. Argoz stared at the gem in her lap, its faint glow reflecting in her sharp yellow eyes. You're supposed to have answers, she muttered bitterly, her fingers brushing against its surface. So why don't you? The gem pulsed once, almost as if responding, but no voice, no vision, no revelation came. Just the same rhythmic glow, steady and unyielding. Argoz let out a frustrated sigh, running a hand through her spiky black hair. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, to find a dark hole somewhere and wait until the danger passed. But she knew better. There was no hiding from Draven, no escaping the pack, no avoiding the shadows that seemed to close in on her from every side. She glanced at Caleb, his face relaxed in sleep, and then at Evelyn, who still sat motionless in her corner. They were here. They'd helped her. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still alone in this, that the weight of the gem and whatever destiny it carried was hers to bear. Her thoughts drifted back to Rose, to the diamond ring she'd flaunted and the sly smile that never quite left her face. Rose had looked at her like a puzzle, a piece on a board she was already manipulating. And then there was Shade, the shadowy figure who had disappeared as if he were never there. Who else was watching? Who else wanted her? And the gem. Argoz's claws dug into the cushion beneath her as a wave of frustration and fear washed over her. She hated this feeling, being lost, being vulnerable, being alone. She clenched her fists, her sharp nails biting into her palms. I need a plan, she whispered to herself. Something. Anything. But no plan came, just the hum of the gem, the slow rise and fall of Caleb's breathing, and the faint rustle of Evelyn shifting in her seat. Hours seemed to stretch endlessly. Eventually Caleb stirred, rolling over with a groggy sigh, but he didn't wake. Evelyn's ember-like eyes had dimmed completely, though Argoz knew she wasn't really asleep. Argoz pulled her knees tighter to her chest, her gaze fixed on the gem as her thoughts spiraled. What if she couldn't figure it out? What if she failed? What if she'd been better off staying in Mirkdusk, letting Draven's forces catch her, ending this chase before it consumed her completely? She shook her head, trying to banish the thoughts, but they clung to her like shadows. The weight of the gem in her hands felt heavier than ever. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I don't know if I can do this." The gem pulsed faintly, its light warm and steady against her trembling fingers. It wasn't an answer, but it was something. And for now, it would have to be enough. The morning sunlight filtered through the warehouse's grimy windows, bathing the room in a muted golden glow. Argoz stretched, her human form feeling strangely natural yet unnerving. The gem's magic had softened her goblin features, her sharp, pointed ears now rounded, her emerald green skin replaced by a pale human complexion. Even her spiky black hair seemed less wild, though it still held a hint of her untamed nature. "You ready?" Caleb's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood by the door, his usual no-nonsense demeanour softened by the faintest hint of a grin. "For what?" Argoz asked, pulling on a borrowed jacket that hung loosely on her slight frame. "To see the world," Caleb replied. "You've been cooped up long enough. Let's get you some real food." Argoz's stomach growled at the thought, and she smirked. "Fine, but if this real food isn't as good as you say, I'm holding you personally responsible." Caleb chuckled, opening the door. "Fair enough." The city bustled with life as they stepped into the sunlight. Cars rumbled past, their engines drowning out the chatter of pedestrians. Argoz's sharp yellow eyes darted around, trying to take in everything at once, the towering buildings, the street vendors shouting over each other, the faint aroma of roasted coffee and baked goods wafting through the air. "It's loud," she muttered, her brow furrowing. "You get used to it," Caleb said, leading her through the crowd. "Come on, I've got a spot in mind." They walked for a few blocks before Caleb stopped in front of a small, unassuming diner. The windows were slightly fogged from the heat inside, and the neon sign above the door flickered faintly. "This is it," Caleb said, pushing the door open. The smell hit her immediately, savoury, greasy, and mouth-watering. Argoz's stomach growled again as she followed Caleb to a booth by the window. The waitress, a woman with a tired smile, handed them menus without a word. "Pick whatever you want," Caleb said, leaning back in the booth. "Trust me, it's all good." Argoz hesitated, scanning the menu. The words were foreign to her, but she pretended to understand, pointing randomly at an item. Caleb smirked but didn't comment, ordering for both of them. When the food arrived, pancakes, eggs, and a plate of crispy bacon, Argoz's eyes widened. She took a cautious bite, then another. Faster this time. Caleb laughed as she devoured her plate. "Told you," he said, sipping his coffee. "Okay," Argoz admitted between bites. "You were right. This is amazing." They left the diner with full stomachs and lightened spirits. Caleb led her through the streets, pointing out landmarks and offering bits of advice about blending in. "Keep your head down," he said as they passed a group of police officers. Humans don't usually notice much, but don't give them a reason to look twice. Argoz nodded, her gaze lingering on the shiny badge one of the officers wore. Her goblin instincts itched to reach out, but she clenched her fists, forcing herself to focus. As they turned down a quieter street, Argoz's steps faltered. A figure stood at the far end of the block, tall and imposing, dressed in dark, intricately woven armour that seemed to absorb the light. His eyes glowed faintly beneath his hood, scanning the crowd with predatory intent. Her heart stopped. Draven's captain. "Caleb," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's him." Caleb followed her gaze, his expression hardening. "Shit. Don't look at him. Keep moving. But it was too late. The captain's glowing eyes locked onto hers and a cruel smile spread across his face. He started toward them, his movements calm but deliberate, like a wolf closing in on its prey. "Argoz, listen to me," Caleb said, grabbing her arm. "We need to go. Now." They darted into an alley, the sound of the captain's boots echoing behind them. Argoz's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing. "He's following us," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "Don't look back," Caleb snapped, pulling her forward. "Just keep running." They weaved through side streets and alleys, dodging pedestrians and skirting around market stalls. Argos's lungs burned, and her legs felt like they might give out, but the captain was relentless. No matter how many corners they turned, how many crowds they passed, he was always just a few steps behind. "We're not losing him," Argoz cried. "We will," Caleb said through gritted teeth. "But I need you to trust me. When I tell you to run, you head straight to the Shadow Realm bar. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I'll slow him down," Caleb said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Just do as I say." They burst out of an alley and into a crowded square. Caleb skidded to a stop, his eyes darting around. The captain emerged a moment later, his presence casting a shadow over the bustling crowd. People moved aside instinctively, their faces blank, as if some unseen force compelled them to clear his path. "Go!" Caleb shouted, shoving Argoz toward a side street. Argoz hesitated, fear and guilt warring within her. But the captain's gaze snapped to her, and she knew she had no choice. She turned and ran, her legs pumping as fast as they could carry her. The streets blurred around her as she sprinted toward the Shadow Realm bar. The neon sign came into view, its flickering glow a beacon of hope. The neon sign of the Shadow Realm bar flickered overhead, its glow casting jagged reflections on the rain-slick pavement. Argoz shoved open the door and stumbled inside, her chest heaving, her mind racing. The noise and warmth of the bar hit her like a wall, the murmurs and clinking glasses briefly grounding her spinning thoughts. She glanced over her shoulder. No sign of him. Not yet. Moving toward the counter, Argoz leaned heavily against it, her hands trembling. The gem beneath her jacket pulsed faintly, almost as if sensing her fear. "You look like you've had a day," the bartender said, eyeing her with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Need a drink?" Argoz didn't answer, her sharp yellow eyes scanning the room. A crowd of eclectic patrons filled the bar. Humans, creatures disguised as humans, and those hiding their true forms. The air buzzed with faint magic, thick and heady like incense. At a corner table, Rose sat with a glass of glowing liquid in hand, her dark eyes sharp despite her relaxed posture. Across from her, a man Argoz vaguely recognized, the one from outside the warehouse, leaned back in his chair, his sharp features illuminated by the faint glow of the bar's multicolored lights. Their eyes met. His gaze narrowed slightly, but before Argoz could react, the door burst open behind her. The bar fell silent as the captain stepped inside. His presence was a black hole, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. The crowd instinctively parted, their faces blank, as if compelled by some unseen force. Argoz froze, her fingers clutching the counter. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her legs wouldn't obey. Rose set her glass down and stood, her movements deliberate and graceful. The glint of the bar's lights caught on the diamond ring she absently twisted on her finger. "Now this," she said, her voice cutting through the silence, "is what we call a bold entrance." The captain's gaze snapped to her, his expression cold and unyielding. "Step aside." Rose tilted her head, her smirk widening. "Oh, honey, you must be new here. Let me explain how this works. You don't waltz into my bar and bark orders, especially not at me." The captain didn't reply. Instead, he moved forward, his heavy boots thudding against the floor. The tension in the room thickened, and Argos's heart pounded in her chest. Rose didn't back down. She stepped directly into the captain's path, her hands on her hips, her voice laced with sarcasm. Big guy, you've got two options. One, you turn around and walk out before this gets messy. Two. The captain's hand lashed out, the crack of his slap echoing through the bar. Rose staggered back, her smirk replaced by a fiery glare. The crowd gasped, and the bar erupted into murmurs. The unspoken rule of the Shadow Realm bar, no violence, had been shattered. You, Rose said, straightening and brushing her hair out of her face, just made the biggest mistake of your life. At the corner table, the man, Darren, pushed his chair back and stood, his posture loose but his expression sharp. He moved toward the captain, his presence commanding in a quiet, calculated way. That's enough, Darren said, his voice calm but firm. You know the rules here. No fighting, no exceptions. The captain sneered, his hand twitching toward the weapon at his side. This doesn't concern you. Darren's eyes narrowed, his tone icy. Oh, it does. See, I like this place, and I don't take kindly to people breaking its rules. Before the captain could respond, the bar's enforcers, three towering figures with stone-like skin, emerged from the back. Their massive forms loomed over the captain, their silence more intimidating than any threat. A moment later, Silas appeared, his calm presence silencing the room. He approached the captain with measured steps, his expression unreadable. You violated the truce, Silas said, his voice low but resonant. This bar is a sanctuary. You know what that means. The captain's sneer faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty, but before he could speak, the enforcers moved. They grabbed his arms, their grip unyielding, and held him in place. Silas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small rune-covered device. He activated it with a soft hum, and a beam of light enveloped the captain. No, the captain snarled, struggling against the enforcers. You can't. The beam intensified, and with a sudden flash, the captain vanished into a swirling portal. The room fell silent, the tension dissipating like smoke. Argoz stared at the spot where the captain had stood, her breath shallow and her hands trembling. The gem beneath her jacket pulsed faintly, its energy reacting to her fear. Rose stepped forward, her smirk sharper now, despite the red mark blooming on her cheek. She tilted her head, her dark eyes fixed on Argoz, like a predator, sizing up prey. Well, darling, I think it's safe to say you're the most exciting thing to walk into this bar tonight. Argoz stiffened. I didn't mean for this to happen. Oh, I'm sure you didn't, Rose said, her voice dripping with feigned sympathy. But trouble has a way of finding you, doesn't it? Darren, who had been watching the exchange silently, stepped closer, his piercing gaze flicking between Rose and Argoz. What's this about, Rose? He asked, his tone edged with suspicion. You know something I don't? Rose glanced at him, her smirk softening into something more calculated. Let's just say our little friend here is of significant interest. I've already had the pleasure of getting acquainted with her. Darren raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms. And you didn't think to mention this earlier? Rose waved a hand dismissively. It's not like I have to share all my secrets, dear. Feeling the weight of their attention, Argoz clutched the gem beneath her jacket, its warmth grounding her. Look, I didn't ask for any of this, she said, her voice shaky but firm. I need to figure out what to do with it. Rose's expression shifted, a glimmer of genuine interest flashing in her eyes. And that's where I come in, isn't it? She gestured toward the bar. You brought your shiny little secret into my territory. Lucky for you, I happen to know a thing or two about keeping things hidden. And alive. Argoz glanced at Darren, unsure. His sharp eyes softened slightly and he nodded. Rose might have her quirks, he said, his tone wry. But she's not wrong. This bar's probably the safest place for you right now. Rose leaned against the bar, twirling her empty glass between her fingers. Safety, of course, isn't free, she said lightly, though her eyes were calculating. There's always a price. Argos's jaw tightened. I don't have anything to give. Rose's smirk widened. Oh, I'm not talking about gold, darling. I want something far more valuable. Your trust. Trust, Argoz repeated, her tone skeptical. Think of it as an alliance, Rose said, her voice smooth. You're in over your head, and I'm offering you a lifeline. You help me keep this place running smoothly, and I'll make sure no one, Draven's lackeys or otherwise, lays a finger on you or your pretty little gem. Darren stepped closer, his expression darkening. Rose, he said sharply, don't push her. Rose straightened, her smirk never wavering. Push her? Oh, Darren, I'm helping her. The poor thing's terrified, and I'm giving her a chance to survive. What could be kinder than that? Argoz looked between them, her instincts torn. She didn't trust Rose, not fully, but the offer was tempting, and she didn't have many options. Finally, Argoz took a deep breath, meeting Rose's gaze. All right, she said quietly. I'll help. Just don't make me regret it. Rose's smirk softened into something almost genuine. Smart girl. She extended her hand, the diamond ring catching the light. Argoz hesitated before shaking it, her sharp yellow eyes wary. As the tension in the bar began to ease, Rose glanced at Darren, her playful smirk returning. See? I'm not so bad. Darren huffed, running a hand through his hair. Let's hope she doesn't regret it. The tension in the bar was just beginning to settle when the door swung open again. Caleb strode in, his jacket torn and a fresh bruise blooming on his cheek, with Evelyn close behind him. The witch's sharp eyes scanned the room before locking onto Argoz, her relief palpable. Thank the stars, Evelyn muttered, her pace quickening as they approached the counter. Caleb, for his part, didn't bother with pleasantries. He planted himself in front of Argoz, looking her over. You all right? Caleb asked, his tone gruff but his concern obvious. Argoz nodded, the knot in her chest loosening slightly. I should be asking you that. You're the one who stayed behind. Gave him the slip, Caleb said, glancing toward the bar door as if expecting the captain to burst in at any moment. Barely. Evelyn huffed, folding her arms. And you didn't think to avoid getting punched in the face? Caleb shot her a look. It's not exactly my specialty, Ev. Darren, who had been standing nearby, stepped forward. His sharp gaze flicked over Caleb and Evelyn, sizing them up. Friends of yours? He asked Argoz, his tone casual but his curiosity obvious. Argoz hesitated, glancing at Caleb and Evelyn for guidance. Caleb's eyes narrowed slightly at Darren, his instincts clearly on high alert. Yeah, we're her friends, Caleb said, his tone curt. And you are? Darren, he said smoothly, extending a hand. Caleb didn't take it. Darren raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Nice to meet you too. Before the conversation could continue, Rose stepped between them, her presence commanding. All right, boys, she said, her tone light but firm. Let's not start measuring who's got the bigger ego. Darren frowned at her, clearly not amused. Rose, we're not done talking. Rose's smirk didn't waver. Oh, but we are. For now. She turned toward him, her dark eyes glittering with amusement. Go cool off, Darren. We'll finish our little chat later. Darren's jaw tightened, but after a long pause, he nodded. Fine, but don't think I'm letting this go. Wouldn't dream of it, Rose said sweetly, her tone dripping with sarcasm. With one last glance at Argoz, Darren turned and left the bar, the door swinging shut behind him. As soon as Darren was gone, Rose turned back to the group, her demeanour shifting from playful to serious. All right, she said, leaning against the counter. You've got my attention, and now my turf's been disrupted twice in one night. Start talking. Evelyn looked to Argoz, her brows furrowing. What did you do? Why do you think I did something? Argoz snapped, crossing her arms. Because trouble doesn't just follow people around for no reason. Evelyn shot back. What happened? Argoz hesitated, glancing down at the gem beneath her jacket. Its faint glow seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. It's this, she said finally, pulling the gem out just enough for the group to see its light. Evelyn's eyes widened, and even Caleb stiffened slightly, his usual composure faltering. "That's what they're after?" Caleb asked, his tone low. Argoz nodded. "The captain. He wants it. And I don't think he's going to stop." Rose's expression didn't change, but the glint in her eyes sharpened. She reached for her glass, swirling its glowing contents idly. "So let me get this straight. You've got a shiny rock that's got half the underworld salivating, and you thought it would be a good idea to bring it here." Argoz bristled. "I didn't have a choice." "Clearly," Rose said, her tone dry. She took a sip of her drink before setting it down with a soft clink. "Lucky for you, I'm feeling generous tonight." "What's that supposed to mean?" Caleb asked, his tone cautious. "It means," Rose said, straightening, "that you're going to sit tight. Let me handle the fallout from this little incident. And in the meantime, I'll decide if you're worth the trouble you've caused." Evelyn frowned. "And what's the price for your generosity?" Rose's smirk returned. "Oh, darling, we'll discuss that later. For now, consider yourselves under my protection. Enjoy it while it lasts." As Rose walked away, her confidence radiating with every step, Argoz slumped against the counter, her frustration bubbling over. "Great," she muttered. "Now I'm stuck owing favours to the Queen of Sarcasm." "You're alive," Caleb said simply. "That's what matters." "For now," Evelyn added, her gaze drifting toward the door. "But if that captain comes back with reinforcements, we need a plan." Caleb nodded. "We can't stay here forever. We need to figure out what that thing is, and why it's so important." Argoz looked down at the gem, its glow reflecting in her sharp yellow eyes. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Me too." The Shadow Realm. Bar's energy had shifted after the earlier commotion. The tension was still thick, lingering like smoke after a fire. Argoz, Caleb, and Evelyn huddled in one of the quieter corners of the grand hall, trying to make sense of their next steps. "I still think we should leave," Caleb muttered, his sharp eyes scanning the room. "This place is a powder keg." "And go where?" Evelyn shot back, her tone dry. "Everywhere else is worse." Argoz was barely listening. Her gaze wandered to the trading tables across the hall, where patrons exchanged items that glimmered under the faint magical light. Her goblin instincts stirred at the sight of glittering jewels and polished metal. She tugged Caleb's sleeve. "Look at that one," she said, pointing to a small black vial being handed over in exchange for a glowing orb. The vial's contents swirled like liquid shadow, faint wisps of dark energy leaking from its corked top. Caleb frowned. "What the hell is that?" "Whatever it is, it's not good," Evelyn said, her voice low. Her hand hovered near her pouch of charms, ready for trouble. "We should keep moving." But before they could, the deal went sour. The buyer, a wiry man with unnaturally bright eyes, grabbed the vial and took a step back, his movements jittery. "This isn't enough," he hissed, his voice cracking with desperation. "You said it would—" The seller, a tall figure wrapped in a dark cloak, didn't respond. They simply turned to leave, but the man lunged, his aura flaring with chaotic energy. The vial shattered in his hand, releasing a dark mist that seemed to crawl along his skin. His scream cut through the hall, and suddenly his body convulsed, the mist merging with his aura in violent, jagged bursts. Argoz froze. The man's eyes locked onto her, wild and unfocused, and he lunged. "Move!" Caleb shouted, pulling her back just as the man's claws swiped through the air where she'd been standing. Evelyn stepped forward, her hands moving in precise motions as she muttered a spell. A faint blue barrier shimmered between them and the man, but it flickered under the weight of his erratic attacks. "This isn't going to hold," Evelyn shouted. Caleb shoved Argoz behind him, his stance firm. "What's wrong with him?" "It's the drug," Evelyn snapped, her voice tight. "The same stuff that's been causing all the chaos here. It's corrupted his aura." "Enough!" Rose's sharp voice sliced through the commotion like a knife. The man froze mid-lunge, his wild eyes flicking toward her. She stepped forward, her expression calm but unyielding, every movement deliberate. Despite her lack of magic, The weight of her presence seemed to anchor the room. "You've already made a mess," Rose said, her tone icy. "Don't make it worse." The man hesitated, his aura flickering erratically. But before he could move again, Silas's enforcers emerged from the shadows, their massive forms cutting off any escape. They subdued him with practiced efficiency, their grip unrelenting. As the chaos settled, Rose turned to Argoz and her companions, her dark eyes narrowing. "You lot seem to attract trouble wherever you go." Argoz bristled. "We didn't do anything. He just—" "Relax, darling," Rose interrupted, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'm not blaming you. Yet." Evelyn stepped forward, her expression grim. "That wasn't normal. The drug. It's worse than I thought." Rose's gaze flicked to the shattered vial on the ground, her smirk fading. "You're not wrong. And if you're smart, you'll help me figure out where this filth is coming from." Caleb frowned. "Why us?" Rose's smirk returned, sharp and knowing. "Because you're here, and because you've got something they want," she said, her eyes flicking briefly to the faint glow beneath Argoz's jacket. "Call it mutual interest." Argoz slumped into one of the Shadow Realm bar's worn leather chairs, the faint hum of the gem beneath her jacket, the only thing keeping her grounded. The earlier chaos replayed in her mind, the man's wild, corrupted aura, the dark energy spilling out of the shattered vial, and the towering enforcers dragging him away. She curled her knees up to her chest, her sharp yellow eyes darting nervously around the room. Caleb leaned against the wall nearby, arms crossed, his steady gaze fixed on her like a shield. Evelyn sat beside her, rubbing her temples as though trying to process the same weight Argoz felt. "You all right?" Caleb asked, his voice low and calm. Argoz shook her head. "No," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "What was that? What even was that?" Evelyn sighed, her tone sharp but not unkind. "It's called reality. Welcome to it." Argoz glared at Evelyn, her fists clenching. "I didn't ask for this," she snapped, her voice rising. "I didn't ask for any of it. The gem, the captain, the crazy guy who tried to kill me. None of this is my fault." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, her calm demeanour unshaken. "No, but it's yours now. That gem chose you, Argoz. Whether you like it or not, it's not going anywhere." Caleb shifted, his voice softening. "Ev, take it easy." But Argoz was already on her feet, pacing. I can't do this," she muttered, her hands tangling in her hair. "I just wanted to survive, maybe find some shiny stuff and keep my head down. And now I'm here, running from captains and whatever that was back there." She gestured vaguely toward the area where the corrupted man had been dragged away. She turned to Caleb, her voice cracking. "What am I supposed to do? What if they come after me again?" Caleb stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You've been through worse," he said firmly. "I've seen you in tighter spots and you've always found a way out. This is just another fight." Argoz blinked at him, her breathing slowing. His confidence felt like a lifeline, even if she didn't fully believe him. "You're not alone in this," Caleb added, his voice gentler now. "Evelyn and we've got your back, and you've got that shiny rock of yours whether you like it or not. So stop panicking and start thinking." "Well, isn't this touching?" Rose's voice sliced through the moment, dripping with sarcasm. She approached, her dark eyes gleaming with amusement as she twirled the empty glass in her hand. "The scrappy little goblin having a crisis. How very relatable." Argos's shoulders stiffened. "What do you want?" Rose smirked, leaning against the back of a nearby chair. "Oh, nothing much. Just to remind you that your problems aren't entirely your own anymore. That little gem of yours has stirred up quite the fuss. And now, thanks to tonight's lovely performance, more people are going to notice." "Great," Argoz muttered, crossing her arms. "That's just what I need." "Which is why you're lucky to have me," Rose continued, ignoring her sarcasm. "Because whether you want to admit it or not, you need someone who understands how this world works. Someone who can keep you from ending up like our poor, unfortunate friend back there." I didn't ask for your help, Argoz shot back, her sharp tone surprising even herself. Rose raised an eyebrow, her smirk unwavering. No, but you're going to get it anyway. Consider it a gift or a favour. Either way, you're not exactly in a position to refuse. Argoz clenched her fists, her frustration boiling over. Why? Why do you even care? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. For the first time, Rose's playful demeanour faltered. Her gaze hardened, a flicker of something darker crossing her face. Let's just say I don't like seeing my territory disrupted, she said evenly. And that gem of yours? It's a magnet for trouble. If you're smart, you'll let me help you keep it and yourself alive. Evelyn stood, her voice cutting through the tension. All right, enough. We all get it. This isn't ideal for anyone, but standing here arguing isn't going to solve anything. She turned to Argoz, her tone softening. Look, you've been thrown into the deep end, but you're stronger than you think. You've survived this long, right? You can survive this too. Argoz hesitated, her gaze flicking between Evelyn and Caleb. Finally, she nodded, though her fists remained clenched. Fine, she muttered. But I don't have to like it. Evelyn smiled faintly. No one's asking you to. The group fell into an uneasy silence, the tension thick but no longer suffocating. Argoz sank back into her chair, her fingers brushing against the gem's faint glow beneath her jacket. She didn't trust Rose, not fully, but for now she didn't have much choice. Good, Rose said finally, her smirk returning. Now that we're all on the same page, let's figure out how to keep you alive long enough to make it worth my time. Argoz sighed, leaning her head back against the chair. Yeah, she muttered. Great plan. The group's discussion shifted as the earlier tension ebbed away. Evelyn sat cross-legged on the floor, her fingers tapping rhythmically against her knee as she studied Argoz. The faint glow of the gem beneath Argoz's jacket drew her gaze like a moth to a flame. It's not just a fancy rock, Evelyn said thoughtfully, her eyes narrowing. The bond. It's something more. Something I haven't seen before. What do you mean? Argoz asked, hugging her knees to her chest. Evelyn hesitated, glancing at Rose. I mean, the gem's not just attached to you, it's alive in some way. It's feeding off your energy, maybe even your emotions. Rose leaned against the bar, her dark eyes fixed on Argoz. Which explains why you're such a magnet for chaos, she said with a smirk. Congratulations, darling. You're officially interesting. Evelyn rolled her eyes at Rose but pressed on. If we're going to figure this out, we need somewhere secure. The gem's magic is subtle, but the wrong spell or the wrong people could trigger something dangerous. Rose straightened, brushing an invisible speck of dust off her sleeve. And where exactly are you staying now? Some 5-star hotel, I presume? Caleb coughed, avoiding her gaze. It's a warehouse. Rose froze, her smirk dropping into an expression of utter disbelief. A warehouse? She repeated as though the word physically hurt her. You're telling me you're keeping a priceless magical artifact and a goblin with an apparent death wish in a place that probably smells like motor oil and rats. It's not that bad, Caleb muttered defensively. Rose waved a hand, cutting him off. No, this won't do. You might as well hang a sign outside that says, "Please come rob us." Argoz bristled. We don't have many options, okay? Not everyone can live in a palace. Rose tilted her head, her smirk returning. True, but not everyone has me. Rose stepped closer, her presence commanding. I know a place, discreet, secure, and far more civilized than your current accommodations. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. What's the catch? Rose's smirk widened. Oh, darling, no catch. Just the satisfaction of knowing you'll stop making me cringe every time I think about your living situation. Uh-huh, Caleb said skeptically. And why would you care? Rose shrugged, leaning casually against the counter. Let's just say I have a vested interest in keeping the gem, and its scrappy little goblin alive. You can thank me later. Argoz frowned, glancing between her companions. I don't know. Evelyn sighed. She's not wrong, Argoz. The warehouse isn't exactly secure. If someone like Draven's captain finds you there— Fine, Argoz interrupted, throwing her hands up. But if this turns out to be some kind of trap, I'm stealing every shiny thing you own. Rose laughed, her voice melodic and sharp. I wouldn't expect anything less. Rose led them through the city's winding streets, her heels clicking confidently against the pavement. The group followed cautiously, with Caleb glancing behind them every few steps. Finally, they arrived at an unassuming brownstone, its exterior weathered but charming. This is it? Argoz asked skeptically. Rose smirked. Don't let the outside fool you. The inside's what counts. She unlocked the door and led them inside, revealing a cosy but surprisingly modern interior. The space was clean with high ceilings, plush furniture, and a faint magical hum in the air. Protective wards shimmered faintly on the walls, barely visible but undeniably powerful. It's warded, Rose said, gesturing around the room. Nothing gets in or out without my permission. Evelyn wandered to one of the walls, her hand brushing against the runes. These wards are advanced, she murmured. Where did you get them? Rose smirked. A lady never tells. Rose led the group into the living room of the safe house, a space that felt far too comfortable for Argoz's liking. Plush sofas and intricate rugs, each seemingly out of place in a world so gritty, surrounded a low table with a single candle flickering at its center. The faint hum of protective wards lingered in the air like a forgotten melody. Make yourselves at home, Rose said casually, dropping into an armchair with practiced grace. She kicked off her heels one at a time and leaned back as if this were her throne. Well, as much as you can anyway. Try not to spill anything. I hate cleaning. Argoz, Caleb, and Evelyn exchanged glances but said nothing. Caleb remained by the door, arms crossed, and his gaze sweeping the room like a hawk. Evelyn sat on the edge of the sofa, her curiosity battling with her natural suspicion. Argoz fidgeted with the edge of her jacket, still wary of what Rose's true motives might be. Rose's dark eyes sparkled as she surveyed them, clearly enjoying their discomfort. Oh, relax, she said, waving a hand dismissively. You all look like you're waiting for me to sprout horns and demand your firstborn. That's probably because we are, Caleb muttered under his breath. Rose laughed, a sharp, melodic sound. Fair. I'll admit, I rarely do anything without strings attached. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. But tonight I'm feeling charitable. In fact, she trailed off, her gaze sliding to Evelyn. I might even show you something I don't show anyone else. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. I'm not sure whether to be honoured or terrified. Probably both, Rose quipped. With deliberate slowness, she rolled up her sleeve, exposing her wrist. There, resting snugly against her skin, was a sleek silver bracelet etched with faint, glowing runes. This little accessory was gifted to me by a mutual acquaintance of ours. Gunnar, if you've heard the name. Evelyn's eyes widened. Caleb stiffened, his gaze flicking to the bracelet, then back to Rose. It's a magic-dampening bracelet, Rose continued, her tone light, though a faint edge of frustration crept into her voice. Designed to keep me from doing anything fiery. And let me tell you, darlings, I am not a fan. Wait! Argoz's sharp voice broke through. You can't use your magic? At all? Rose turned to her, smirking. Not even a spark, it's tragic, really. Why are you telling us this? Caleb asked, his voice low and cautious. No offence, but you don't seem like the type to admit weakness. Rose leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. Consider it a gesture of trust. If we're going to be working together, or at least cohabitating, it helps to be on the same page. Besides, she turned to Evelyn, her smirk widening. I'm hoping our resident witch might have some insight, perhaps even a solution. Evelyn leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. Can I see it? Rose extended her arm gracefully, the bracelet catching the room's faint magical light. Evelyn's fingers hovered over the runes, her brows furrowing as she examined the intricate etchings. "This is advanced," Evelyn murmured, her tone tinged with awe. "These aren't standard suppression runes. Whoever made this knew exactly what they were doing." "That would be Gunnar," Rose said dryly. "The man has a knack for ruining people's fun." Evelyn muttered a few incantations under her breath, her fingers tracing the runes. A faint blue glow flared to life, flickering like candlelight before sputtering out. Evelyn sat back, frowning. "It's definitely beyond anything I've worked with before, but I might be able to try something." Rose tilted her head. "Oh, do tell." "Well, there's a spell I could use to disrupt the runes temporarily," Evelyn said cautiously. "It wouldn't remove the bracelet, but it might weaken its hold. Just enough for you to, I don't know, light a match." Rose's smirk returned, her eyes gleaming with interest. "Do it," Caleb sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "This is a bad idea." "I second that," Argoz added, though her gaze was fixed on the bracelet with a goblin's insatiable curiosity. Evelyn ignored them, already muttering another incantation as she held her hand over the bracelet. The air grew heavy, the wards in the room flickering faintly as her magic pulsed outward. For a moment, the runes on the bracelet dimmed. Then they flared to life with blinding intensity. A loud pop echoed through the room, and a flash of light sent Evelyn tumbling backward. Rose yelped as the bracelet emitted a harmless but dramatic spark, her arm jerking involuntarily. Argoz let out an undignified snort of laughter, quickly covering her mouth. Caleb moved to help Evelyn up, muttering, "Told you." Evelyn groaned, brushing off his hand. "I'm fine," she snapped, though her cheeks were flushed with embarrassment. It didn't work, obviously. Rose held up her arm, inspecting the bracelet. "Well, that was anticlimactic, but entertaining. Do you do party tricks too?" Evelyn shot her a glare. "If you want someone to remove that thing, you're going to need a lot more than what I can offer. That magic is way beyond me." Argoz leaned forward, her sharp eyes fixed on the bracelet. "It's kind of pretty," she said thoughtfully. "If it didn't, completely ruin your life." Rose raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Oh, it's lovely, darling. A real fashion statement. I just wish it didn't come with the whole no magic side effect." Argoz grinned, her earlier tension easing slightly. "Bet it'd sell for a fortune." Rose chuckled, a wicked glint in her eye. She rolled up her sleeve again, holding out her wrist and the bracelet. "Go ahead. Steal this. I'll even let you have it." Argoz froze, her confidence wavering. No thanks." Rose laughed, a genuine sound that filled the room. Smart choice. She let her sleeve fall back down and leaned against the arm of her chair, her smirk firmly back in place. "Now, darling, I trust we'll keep this little revelation between us. After all, I'd hate for anyone to think I'm not as untouchable as I appear." Argoz crossed her arms, her sharp yellow eyes narrowing. "Fine, but if you double-cross us, I'm taking more than just your shiny stuff." "Of course you will," Rose said sweetly, her smirk widening. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Rose leaned back in her chair, stretching dramatically. "Well," she said, her tone dripping with mock exasperation, "since no one managed to blow anything up, beyond Evelyn's pride, I suppose we should celebrate. I'm starving. Shall we order something?" The group stared at her, each processing the sudden shift in tone. "Order?" Caleb asked, his brow furrowing. "You mean food?" "No, dear," Rose said, rolling her eyes. "I meant rare artifacts and a bottle of wine that costs more than your car. Of course I meant food." She turned to Argoz, her smirk widening. "What's your poison, little goblin? Pizza? Thai? Or are you more of a shiny wrapper on fast food kind of girl?" "Hey!" Argoz snapped, crossing her arms. "I'll have you know I have excellent taste." Rose raised an eyebrow. "Oh, do you now?" "Yeah," Argoz shot back. "Like burgers. From that place with the golden arches." Rose gasped, clutching her chest in mock horror. "Burgers? From McRonald's or whatever it's called?" Darling, have you no shame? It's McDonald's, Caleb said flatly, rubbing the bridge of his nose. And don't knock it. It's not bad. Oh, the horror, Rose muttered, shaking her head. Fine. Let's debase ourselves and eat grease on bread. Caleb, I'm sure you're familiar. Why don't you do the honours? Caleb pulled out his phone, already regretting the decision. What do you guys want? Cheeseburger, Argoz said immediately. And fries. Large fries. And, wait, they do milkshakes, right? Yes, Caleb said dryly. Chocolate, Argoz exclaimed. No, wait, vanilla, or both. Can I get both? Do you want a cheeseburger with that milkshake? Caleb asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. Yes, Argoz replied earnestly, missing the joke entirely. Evelyn leaned back on the couch, her arms crossed. I'm not eating that garbage. Suit yourself, Caleb muttered, typing on his phone. What about you, Rose? Rose tilted her head, her dark eyes gleaming mischievously. Surprise me, Caleb sighed. You're going to regret saying that. When the food arrived, Argoz practically dove for the bag, pulling out her cheeseburger and fries like she'd struck gold. She unwrapped the sandwich reverently, her sharp yellow eyes gleaming. Now this is treasure. Caleb handed a smaller bag to Rose, who opened it with a skeptical expression. Inside was a plain cheeseburger, an apple pie, and a side of fries. Rose's smirk faltered. An apple pie? Really? You said surprise you, Caleb replied innocently, popping a fry into his mouth. You're welcome. Rose held up the tiny cardboard sleeve containing the pie, her expression blank. Is this supposed to be food? It's delicious, Argoz chimed in, her mouth full of fries. Trust me. Rose sighed, unwrapping the pie with the air of someone preparing to endure great suffering. She took a small bite, paused, and then took another. Her face remained stoic, but she didn't stop eating. Told you, Argoz said smugly. Evelyn, meanwhile, had caved and stolen a handful of fries. If I die from this, I'm haunting all of you. Spirits don't gain calories, Rose said, taking another bite of her pie. Eat up, darling. The room settled into a strange, companionable silence, the scent of burgers and fries mingling with the faint hum of the wards. For a moment the tension lifted, replaced by something almost normal. And then Argoz burped. The meal had done its job. The tension in the room had eased, the group settling into an uneasy camaraderie. Caleb sat near the door, as always keeping an eye on the room, while Evelyn leaned back on the couch, her fingers absently tracing patterns in the air as though testing unseen magic. Argoz, now curled into one of the plush armchairs, let out a content sigh, her half-eaten milkshake resting on the table beside her. Rose, ever the picture of grace, perched on the edge of her chair, her dark eyes fixed on Argoz. The faint glow of the gem beneath Argoz's jacket caught her attention, its pulsing light soft but steady. So, Rose began, her voice cutting through the quiet like a razor. About that little trinket of yours. Argoz stiffened, her sharp yellow eyes narrowing. What about it? Oh, don't be coy, Rose said, leaning forward. You've seen what it can do, how it reacts to you. Evelyn and I both know it's not just some fancy rock. It's time we figured out exactly what you're dealing with. Argoz's fingers brushed against the gem protectively, the warmth of its pulse grounding her. It's not hurting anyone. Yet, Evelyn cut in, her tone measured. But we don't know what it's capable of. You said it changed your appearance when you came to Earth, right? Argoz nodded hesitantly. Yeah. When I got here, it made me look human. Like it knew I'd need to blend in. Evelyn exchanged a glance with Rose. That's not just instinct, that's intelligence. Whatever magic is inside that gem, it's connected to you. Deeply. Connected how? Caleb asked, his tone skeptical. Like it's alive? Not alive, Evelyn corrected, but not far from it. It's attuned to her, like it's feeding off her energy. Symbiotic. Great, Argoz muttered, sinking deeper into the chair. So it's using me. Not necessarily, Evelyn said. Symbiosis means it gives something back, too. What have you noticed? Strength? Speed? Heightened senses? Argoz shrugged. I don't know. I guess I feel more aware sometimes. Like I can sense things I couldn't before. And when that captain was chasing us, I swear it helped me. Evelyn frowned, her fingers twitching as though resisting the urge to pull the gem from Argoz's jacket and examine it on the spot. It's protective, then. That's unusual. Rose leaned back, her smirk fading into something sharper, more calculating. Protective magic isn't unheard of, but this feels ancient. The kind of thing that's crafted with intent. Whoever made that gem didn't just want it to be powerful, they wanted it to bond with someone. That's someone being me, Argoz said flatly. Rose nodded. And whoever made it might not have been working alone. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Argoz's fingers tightened around the gem, its faint glow spilling through the fabric of her jacket. Is it dangerous? Caleb asked finally, his voice breaking the quiet. Not inherently, Evelyn said cautiously, but it's unpredictable, and that makes it dangerous enough. So what do we do? Argoz asked, her voice tinged with frustration. I can't just get rid of it. Not that you'd want to, Rose said with a sly smile. It's far too useful. Argoz glared at her. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Rose's smirk widened. Immensely. Evelyn sighed, standing and pacing the room. We need to study it. Find out what kind of magic we're dealing with, where it came from, and why it bonded to you. Without that information, we're flying blind. And where exactly are we supposed to do that? Caleb asked. Because I'm guessing it's not going to be here. Rose tilted her head thoughtfully. Actually, I might know a place. A friend of mine, let's call her an expert in magical artifacts, has a workshop not far from here. Discreet, well-protected, and stocked with everything Evelyn could need to take a closer look. And what's your friend going to want in return? Caleb asked suspiciously. Rose shrugged, her smirk playful. Oh, nothing much. She owes me a favour or two. Sounds legit, Argoz muttered. Evelyn frowned, her eyes narrowing at Rose. And you're just offering this out of the kindness of your heart? Of course not, Rose said smoothly. I'm offering it because I'm curious. I want to see what makes our little goblin tick. And because if that gem is as powerful as it seems, keeping you alive and stable is in everyone's best interest. The group exchanged wary glances, the weight of Rose's words settling over them. I don't like it, Caleb said finally, but we don't have a better option. Agreed, Evelyn said reluctantly. She turned to Argoz, her expression softening. You okay with this? Argoz hesitated, the gem's pulse steady beneath her hand. I don't trust her, she said honestly. But if this thing is going to keep messing with my life, I need to know what it is. Rose clapped her hands together, her smirk widening. Excellent, then it's settled. Tomorrow we'll pay my friend a visit, and who knows? She glanced at Argoz, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Maybe you'll finally start to appreciate how interesting you really are. Argoz rolled her eyes but couldn't stop the faint smirk tugging at her lips. Yeah, I'm thrilled. The evening passed quietly after the conversation about the gem. Caleb, Evelyn and Argoz were still processing the weight of their situation, and even Rose seemed content to let the subject rest for the night. As the group prepared to settle in, Rose stood, her usual smirk firmly in place. Well, darlings, as much as I enjoy your company, even I need beauty sleep. Come on, let me show you to your rooms. Argoz raised an eyebrow. Rooms? Plural? Rose's smirk widened. Of course, I wouldn't dream of making you share. Rose led them down a hallway that seemed much larger on the inside than the house's exterior suggested. The faint glow of magical wards shimmered along the walls, illuminating the space in soft hues of gold and blue. She stopped at the first door and gestured for Caleb. This one's yours, she said simply. Caleb opened the door cautiously, stepping inside. His eyebrows shot up. The room was sparse but exactly to his liking. A sturdy bed with plain grey sheets, a desk, and a simple wardrobe. A faint smell of wood polish hung in the air, and a set of weights rested neatly in one corner. "Not bad," he said, though his voice carried a hint of suspicion. "How'd you know?" "I didn't," Rose replied breezily. "Next." She led Evelyn to the next door. Evelyn stepped inside and froze. The room was bathed in soft, warm light, with shelves lined with books and jars of herbs, as if it were designed for a witch. A small cauldron rested on a table in the corner, and the faint scent of lavender and sage wafted through the air. Evelyn turned back to Rose, her eyes narrowing. "Very funny." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Rose said, her expression innocent, but her tone dripping with amusement. Finally, Rose stopped at the last door and gestured to Argoz. "And here we are. Try not to steal anything." Argoz huffed, stepping inside. Her eyes widened. The room sparkled, literally. Strings of fairy lights hung across the ceiling, their soft glow illuminating a collection of trinkets and shiny objects displayed on shelves. A small chest rested at the foot of the bed, its hinges gleaming with polished brass. Argoz turned to Rose, her sharp yellow eyes narrowing. "Okay, what's going on? Did you go through my stuff?" Rose laughed, waving her off. "Good night, Argoz." The next morning, the group gathered in the dining area, the smell of coffee and fresh bread wafting through the air. Argoz slouched in her chair, a piece of toast halfway to her mouth. Caleb nursed a steaming cup of black coffee, his brow furrowed in thought. Evelyn, as always, was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. "Okay, we all agree last night was weird, right?" she said, her tone sharp. Caleb nodded. "Those rooms were way too specific. How does she know what we need?" "She doesn't," Argoz said, her mouth full of toast, "probably spying on us." Evelyn frowned. "Magic, more likely. But still, why?" As if on cue, Rose entered the dining area, looking perfectly refreshed despite the early hour. She carried a cup of tea and a plate of fresh fruit, her smirk firmly in place. "Well, good morning, Sunshine Squad," she said brightly. "What's all the whispering about?" The group exchanged glances before Caleb spoke up. "The rooms." "Ah." Rose took a sip of her tea, her smirk widening. "Let me guess. You're all wondering how I knew your deepest desires." Evelyn rolled her eyes. "Spare us the theatrics, Rose. What's going on?" Rose set her tea down and leaned against the table, clearly enjoying the moment. "The rooms are enchanted. Simple as that. They adjust to provide whatever the occupant needs. Comfort, tools, even a little sparkle in someone's case." She glanced pointedly at Argoz. Argoz scowled. "It's creepy." "It's practical," Rose corrected. "And before you ask, no, I don't control it. The enchantment predates me. Consider it part of the house's charm." Evelyn crossed her arms. "And we're just supposed to take your word for it?" Rose's smirk softened slightly, her tone becoming almost genuine. "You're alive and rested, aren't you? The house is a safe place. If it wanted to hurt you, you'd know by now." The group fell into an uneasy silence. Caleb leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes studying Rose. "Convenient," he said finally. "Too convenient." Rose tilted her head, her smirk returning. "Oh, Caleb, you wound me. Why must you always assume the worst?" "Experience," he said flatly. Rose laughed, a bright, sharp sound. "Fair enough. But trust me, if I wanted something from you, you'd know." "Comforting," Argoz muttered, popping the last piece of toast into her mouth. The following day, Rose gathered the group in the safe house's foyer, her usual smirk firmly in place. "Right, darlings," she said, fastening the last button on her tailored jacket. "Time to visit someone who knows more about magical trinkets than even I do." Argoz frowned, her fingers brushing against the gem beneath her jacket. "And we trust this person?" "More than you trust me," Rose replied sweetly, eliciting a small chuckle from Caleb. "But yes, we trust her. She's let's call her a connoisseur of magical oddities. If anyone can tell us what your shiny little friend is, it's her." Evelyn crossed her arms. Where exactly are we going? Rose's smirk widened. A little place called Hexhaven. The group made their way through the city's labyrinthine streets, sticking to side alleys and lesser-used roads. Caleb kept a wary eye on their surroundings, his hand hovering near the concealed weapon at his side. Argoz, meanwhile, couldn't help but feel the gem's faint pulse quicken with every step. "You sure about this?" she whispered to Evelyn, who walked beside her. Evelyn nodded, her gaze ahead. "We don't have a better option. And if Rose is right, this expert might actually help." "If Rose is right," Argoz muttered under her breath. "Great." After nearly an hour of walking, Rose stopped in front of an inconspicuous brick building with boarded-up windows and a faded sign above the door that read Hexhaven, Curiosities and Consultation. "This is it?" Caleb asked, his voice flat. "Don't let the decor fool you," Rose said, pushing the door open. "The inside is far more interesting." The interior of Hexhaven was a chaotic symphony of colour and sound. Shelves lined the walls filled with artefacts ranging from glowing crystals to ancient tomes. A faint hum of magic filled the air, mingling with the scent of burning incense. In the centre of the room stood a large circular table covered in runes, each glowing faintly in the dim light. Behind the table was a woman who seemed to be a contradiction in motion. Her silvery hair was tied in a messy bun, streaked with hints of teal, while her dark robes shimmered faintly as she moved. She looked up from the book she was reading, her sharp green eyes locking onto Rose. "Well, well," she said, her voice rich with amusement. "If it isn't Rose Blackthorn gracing my shop. What's the occasion?" "Hello, Margot," Rose replied, her smirk softening into something almost genuine. "We've got a bit of a mystery that needs solving." Margot's gaze shifted to the group, lingering briefly on Argos. "And who are your charming companions?" "Long story," Rose said smoothly. "Let's just say they're in need of your expertise." Margot gestured for the group to gather around the table, her movements graceful and deliberate. "All right, let's see this mystery of yours." Argoz hesitated, her hand tightening around the gem beneath her jacket. Caleb stepped closer, his voice low. "It's all right." Reluctantly, Argoz pulled the gem out and set it on the table. Its light pulsed faintly, the intricate patterns swirling beneath its surface casting soft shadows across the room. Margot's eyes widened slightly. "Oh my." "That's what we said," Evelyn muttered. Margot circled the table, her fingers hovering over the gem but never quite touching it. "This isn't just any artifact," she murmured. "This is ancient, Nithorian if I'm not mistaken." "Nithorian?" Evelyn echoed, her brow furrowing. "That's impossible. Their magic hasn't been seen in centuries." "Precisely," Margot said, her gaze sharp. "Which makes this all the more intriguing. And dangerous." Argoz shifted uneasily. "Dangerous how?" Margot tilted her head, her green eyes meeting Argoz's. "It's bonded to you, isn't it?" Argoz nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, I didn't ask for it, though." "You rarely do with things like this," Margot said, her tone almost gentle. "But this bond, it's protective, yes, but also possessive. It's not just guarding you, it's claiming you." "What does that mean?" Caleb asked, his tone tense. Margot sighed, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "It means whoever created this gem didn't just make it to protect its bearer. They made it to control them. Over time, the bond will deepen, and the line between you and the gem will blur. If you're not careful, it could consume you." "Consume me?" Argoz repeated, her voice rising. "What does that even mean?" "Calm down," Rose said, her tone surprisingly soothing. "She's not saying you're doomed. She's saying you need to be careful. Big difference." Margot nodded. "Exactly. The gem is powerful, but it's also volatile. If you can learn to control it, you might be able to unlock its full potential. But if you let it control you..." Evelyn frowned. "Is there a way to sever the bond?" Margot shook her head. Not without destroying the gem, and that could be catastrophic. For now, your best option is to study it, learn its magic, understand its intent. The group fell silent, the weight of Margot's words hanging over them. Finally, Caleb spoke. "And how do we do that?" Margot smiled faintly. "Leave that to me. I can prepare a series of wards and charms to help stabilize the bond. It won't sever it, but it'll give you time to figure out your next steps." Argoz glanced at the gem, its light pulsing steadily. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said quietly. "No one ever does," Margot replied. "But you're stronger than you think, and with the right guidance, you might just learn to make this bond work for you." Rose clapped her hands together, her smirk returning. "Well, there you have it. Mystery solved. For now." As Rose clapped her hands, the metallic gleam of the bracelet caught Margot's attention. Her sharp green eyes narrowed, her expression shifting from curiosity to recognition. "Interesting piece you've got there," Margot said, her tone more serious this time. "That bracelet, it's not just any magic-dampening artifact, is it?" Rose's smirk remained, though there was a flicker of tension in her eyes. "You're quite observant, Margot." Margot stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the bracelet. "I've seen that craftsmanship before. Alfheim, isn't it? The Guardians." Evelyn straightened at the mention of Alfheim. Her interest piqued. "Wait, Guardians? What are you talking about?" Margot circled Rose slowly, her movements deliberate. "The Guardians of Alfheim are legendary. Their enchantments are unmatched, designed not just to suppress magic, but to bind the will of their targets. Whoever put that on you wanted to make sure you couldn't burn anything down." Rose's smirk faltered, her tone cool. "Your powers of deduction are staggering." Caleb leaned against the table, his arms crossed. "Why would someone from Alfheim target you?" Rose shot him a sharp look, her smirk returning but strained. "Let's just say I had a misunderstanding with someone very fond of rules." Margot tilted her head, her expression contemplative. "The Guardians don't intervene lightly. If they marked you, there's a story there." "And one that's none of your business," Rose snapped, though her voice lacked its usual venom. "I told my charming companions here everything they need to know. If you're hoping for more, you'll be disappointed." Margot shrugged, her interest clearly not deterred. "Suit yourself. But if that bracelet's Alfheim made, I wouldn't hold out hope of removing it any time soon. The Guardians don't leave back doors in their magic." Evelyn frowned, her earlier failure to remove the bracelet now making sense. "That explains why my spell didn't even dent it." "Exactly," Margot said, turning to Evelyn. "Alfheim's enchantments are designed to be immutable. If you tried to force it, you're lucky you didn't blow up the whole room." Argoz, who had been quietly observing, tilted her head. "So it's stuck on her forever?" "Unless she finds a guardian willing to remove it," Margot replied, her tone matter of fact. "But good luck with that." Rose rolled her sleeve back down, her smirk sharpening. "Well, thank you for the unsolicited lecture, Margot. Always a pleasure." Margot smiled faintly, clearly unfazed. "If you ever change your mind about removing it, you know where to find me. But something tells me you're more interested in keeping your secrets." Rose inclined her head, her smirk softening. "And you'd be correct." "Details," Rose said breezily. "Now, who's hungry?" The group steps out into the cool evening air, the faint hum of the magical wards inside Hexhaven still buzzing in their ears. Caleb leads the way, his sharp eyes scanning the empty street. Evelyn walks beside him, her brow furrowed in thought, while Argoz lags behind, the gem glowing faintly beneath her jacket. Rose brings up the rear, her usual smirk firmly in place, though her gaze flickers with something more guarded. "Well, that was enlightening," Rose said breezily, breaking the silence. Evelyn stopped abruptly, turning to face her. "Enlightening? Margot just said that bracelet is from Alfheim. Made by the Guardians." "And?" Rose's smirk didn't waver. "And you told us Gunnar put it on you," Evelyn snapped. "How exactly does someone like him get his hands on something that rare? Did he steal it? Or is he working with them? Caleb crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. It's a fair question. Guardians don't just hand out their artifacts. How'd he get it? Rose tilted her head, her dark eyes gleaming with amusement. Oh, I'm sure Gunnar has his secrets. He's not exactly the sharing type. That's not an answer, Evelyn said sharply. No, it's not, Rose replied, her smirk widening. But it's the only one you're getting. Argoz frowned, her gaze shifting between them. So you don't know? Or you just don't want to tell us? Rose hesitated for the briefest moment, her smirk faltering before returning in full force. Let's just say it's complicated. Complicated how? Caleb pressed. Rose rolled her eyes. Complicated as in I don't know the full story. Gunnar isn't exactly the type to explain his methods. All I know is that one moment, I had magic, and the next, I had this lovely accessory. She gestured to the bracelet. The rest is his business. The group fell into an uneasy silence as they continued down the street. Finally, Evelyn spoke, her tone measured. If Gunnar got that bracelet from Alfheim, it means he either has connections there, or he went through someone who does. Either way, it's unsettling. Unsettling? Caleb echoed. Evelyn nodded. The Guardians don't just make these things on a whim. If Gunnar had access to one, it means he's either working with them or against them. And neither option is comforting. Argoz tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. Why does it matter? If he's working with them, isn't that a good thing? Not necessarily, Evelyn said. The Guardians don't trust easily, and they don't interfere lightly. If Gunnar's on their radar, it means he's either done something extraordinary or something dangerous. And if he's working against them? Caleb asked. Evelyn hesitated. Then he's more dangerous than we thought. Rose let out a low chuckle, drawing the group's attention. You're giving Gunnar far too much credit. He's a blunt instrument, effective but hardly subtle. If he got that bracelet, it wasn't through charm or diplomacy. My guess, he took it. By force. Caleb frowned. You think he stole it? Rose shrugged. I wouldn't put it past him. But then again, she trailed off, her smirk fading into something more thoughtful. Then again what? Evelyn pressed. Then again, Rose said slowly, if Gunnar did take it, the Guardians would know. And they'd have come for him by now. She glanced at her wrist, the faint glow of the bracelet's runes just visible beneath her sleeve. Which means maybe they gave it to him. For a reason. The group exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Rose's words settling over them. So, what does that mean for us? Argoz asked, her voice quiet. It means, Evelyn said, her tone firm, that we need to be careful. If Gunnar's involved with Alfheim, it's only a matter of time before this whole thing gets more complicated. And more dangerous, Caleb added. Rose smirked, her usual confidence returning. Oh, darling, danger is a given. The question is, are you ready for it? The group continued down the dimly lit streets, their conversation about Gunnar and the mysterious origins of the bracelet still hanging heavily in the air. Caleb walked slightly ahead, his eyes scanning for threats, while Evelyn matched pace with Argoz, who still clutched the gem beneath her jacket like a lifeline. Rose strolled behind them, a faint smirk on her lips, clearly enjoying the unease her revelations had caused. I still don't buy it, Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the quiet. Gunnar working with the Guardians. It doesn't add up. Maybe he didn't work with them, Caleb offered, his tone measured. Maybe he took it, or someone gave it to him. Someone, Rose interjected, who had no idea how irritating he is. Evelyn shot her a look over her shoulder. Do you ever take anything seriously? Not if I can help it, Rose said lightly, though her gaze flickered to her bracelet for a moment before returning to its usual sharpness. But let's not dwell on Gunnar, shall we? There are far more interesting topics to discuss. Argoz hesitated, her sharp yellow eyes darting between the others. Speaking of interesting topics, that guy, the one at the warehouse, with the glowing handcuffs. Caleb frowned, his pace slowing. Darren. What about him? Argoz shrugged, her hand brushing against the gem, as if drawing comfort from its pulse. He's everywhere. At the warehouse, at the bar. And you know him, right? She glanced at Rose. What's his deal? Rose's smirk widened. Oh, Darren, he's quite the character. Translation? Evelyn asked, her brow furrowing. Rose sighed dramatically as if the effort of explaining was an inconvenience. Darren is one of those rare creatures who manages to straddle the line between amusing and insufferable. He's smart, charming, and just dangerous enough to keep things interesting. Caleb crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. You trust him? Not at all, Rose replied cheerfully, but that doesn't mean I can't use him. Argoz stiffened. Use him? For what? Rose's smirk turned razor-sharp. For information, of course. Darren has a knack for getting into places he shouldn't and uncovering things most people want to keep hidden, including, I suspect, the origins of this little drug problem that's been cropping up. Evelyn stopped walking, turning to face Rose fully. Wait. Are you saying you're using him to investigate the drug? Rose tilted her head, her smirk softening into something closer to a grin. Of course I am. What else would I do with someone like Darren? And he's okay with this? Caleb asked, his tone cautious. Rose laughed, a rich, melodic sound that carried through the empty street. Oh, darling, Darren knows exactly what he's doing. He thinks he's using me just as much as I'm using him. Is he? Argoz asked quietly. Rose's gaze flicked to her, something sharper and more calculating in her eyes. Not yet. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice dropping into a more serious tone. And what happens when he finds out about the gem? Because if he's sniffing around the bar, he's bound to hear something. Then we'll deal with it, Rose said smoothly. Darren's curious, but he's not stupid. If he thinks getting too close to this little mystery will burn him, he'll back off. And if he doesn't, Caleb pressed. Rose's smirk faded slightly, her tone cooling. Then I'll make sure he does. The group exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Rose's words settling over them. Finally, Argoz spoke, her voice quiet but firm. I don't want him involved. He doesn't need to know about the gem. Rose tilted her head, studying Argoz for a moment before nodding. Fair enough. But just so you know, darling, Darren has a way of finding things out. It's only a matter of time before he shows up on our doorstep. The group resumed walking, the tension between them palpable. Caleb fell into step beside Argoz, his voice low. You think she's right? About Darren? Argoz shrugged, her gaze fixed ahead. I don't know, but if he shows up, I want to be ready. The group walked in tense silence, the dim streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. Rose trailed slightly behind, her usual confident stride faltering for a moment before she caught herself. The questions, the doubts, the constant prodding, it all grated at her no matter how hard she tried to hide it. Finally, she broke the silence with a sharp sigh. If you're all done interrogating me, I'd love to get back to my very expensive wine and a book that doesn't ask invasive questions. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder, raising an eyebrow. Touchy, are we? Oh, darling, Rose drawled, her smirk returning like a mask. You wouldn't like me when I'm really touchy. Is that a threat or a warning? Caleb asked, his tone dry. Rose smiled, a slow, sharp curve of her lips. Both. Argoz frowned, her sharp yellow eyes flicking between them. You act like we're the bad guys for asking questions, but you're the one with all the secrets. Rose stopped walking, her dark eyes narrowing. Secrets are a matter of survival, darling. Perhaps you'd understand that if you didn't wear your heart and your magic on your sleeve. Argoz bristled, stepping closer. At least I'm not hiding who I am. Enough, Caleb interrupted, stepping between them. We've got enough problems without turning on each other. Rose's smirk returned, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Caleb, always the peacemaker. How noble. By the time they reached the safe house, the tension had settled into an uneasy truce. Rose pushed the door open with more force than necessary, stepping inside and tossing her jacket onto a nearby chair. The wards hummed softly as the group followed, their magic tingling faintly against their skin. "Well," Rose said, her tone clipped, "make yourselves comfortable, again, while I decide whether I'm still feeling charitable." Evelyn crossed her arms, her expression unimpressed. "Oh, come on, Rose. Don't act like we offended you." Rose turned, her smirk twisting into something sharper. "Offended? No, just bored. Do you know how tiresome it is, always being doubted, always being the one who has to carry the weight of everyone else's suspicion? It's exhausting, darling. Maybe if you were honest for once, people wouldn't doubt you so much," Argoz muttered. The room fell silent, the weight of Argoz's words hanging in the air. Rose's dark eyes flicked to her, something unspoken passing between them before she turned away. "Honesty is overrated," Rose said lightly, though her tone lacked its usual bite. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need a drink." As Rose disappeared into the kitchen, the rest of the group exchanged glances. "She's rattled," Caleb said quietly, leaning against the wall. Evelyn nodded. "That's the most defensive I've ever seen her." "Good," Argoz said, crossing her arms. "Maybe she'll think twice about keeping us in the dark." Caleb frowned. "Or maybe she'll double down. Either way, we need to figure out what's next." "What's next is figuring out the gem," Evelyn said, her gaze shifting to Argoz. "Margot's advice was solid. If we don't understand what it's doing, or what it wants, it's going to keep causing problems." Argoz sighed, pulling the gem out from beneath her jacket. Its faint glow pulsed rhythmically, casting soft shadows on the walls. "I didn't ask for this, you know." "We know," Caleb said, his tone firm but not unkind. "But it's here, and it's bonded to you, so we deal with it." "Easier said than done," Argoz muttered, tucking the gem away. Rose reappeared a few moments later, a glass of wine in hand and her smirk back in place. "Done conspiring without me?" "We weren't conspiring," Evelyn said flatly. "We were planning." "Semantics," Rose said breezily, taking a sip of her wine. "So, what's the brilliant plan?" Evelyn frowned. "We study the gem. Margot's right. We need to understand its magic. And we need somewhere safe to do it." "Well," Rose said, gesturing to the room around them, "you're already in the safest place you'll find this side of the Shadow Realm. Unless, of course, you'd like to pitch a tent in the woods." Argoz rolled her eyes. "Why are you even helping us?" Rose tilted her head, her smirk softening slightly. "Maybe I'm curious, or maybe I just don't like the idea of someone else getting their hands on that gem. Either way, you're here, so let's not waste time questioning my generosity." "Fine," Evelyn said reluctantly, "but if we're staying, you're going to have to work with us, not against us." Rose raised her glass in a mock toast. "Cheers to cooperation, then."
Well, you found your way to the end, haven't you? That must mean you're curious, and we love curiosity around here. Before you vanish into the ether, take a moment to subscribe. It's just a click, and trust me, you'll want to stay in the loop for what comes next. And while you're at it, give the video a like. The energy exchange is good for you. Hit that notification bell too. You wouldn't want to miss out on any of our magical misadventures. Who knows what I might conjure up next. Alright, off you go. But remember, I'll know if you didn't subscribe. See you on the other side.